Good evening, boys and Jordan. Let's see, young men and Phil, distinguished, classy gentlemen, and forget it. Oh, we have the next edition of the Boys Summer Podcast. Eric, the fans have spoken. Our many adoring fans have spoken. They have made demands. They demanded to see us. I had to wait until 11 p.m. at night when the house is asleep and couldn't take time away from the fiance's spring break, so here we are.
Oh man. Hey, must be nice to get a spring break, huh? There you
It
go.
is nice to get a
And then
spring break.
and
Yours
then
is
there's
in like
Tyler,
three
Mr.
months, right?
Tyler, 60 hours, 70 hours.
Yeah.
Fucking teachers.
But what you're finally understanding the struggle of coaching this year. I'm
Oh yeah.
happy that you're finally starting to understand.
Oh yeah.
The labors of the hours and hours on end of coaching softball.
Oh yeah, man. Hey, it's great though. I'm here. I'm committed. I'm ready to rock. I've been ready to rock. I'm ready to talk some baseball. But yeah, no, it's been great. It's been fun.
To your credit, you have done your research. You have your data's been written down for a
I
minute.
do.
You
And the sheet
you
worked
had
well last
you
year. This
had you
data sheet did predict 5 out of 6 playoff teams last year.
did
So
it.
if I can get that success again, I'll take it.
You have your sheet, you had your power rankings a little bit before me. Yeah, I didn't think that this would happen. I didn't think we'd be here this early, unfortunately, trying to squeeze us in our different schedules, but here we are. So
We're doing
we're
it.
we're gonna make the most of it. My first question to you, Eric, was did we miss anything in the last pod? And you told me no, we are perfect, we are flawless. We recorded for 3 hours. We
Uh,
didn't
or
miss a damn thing.
Am I like the Tony Reale like fact check guy? Like, did
Yeah,
we miss
yeah.
anything? Did you? Yeah.
Just
Rest in
missing the
peace
paper
around the
toss.
horn too. By the way, rest in peace
Yeah,
around the horn.
pour one out.
I know, right? No, I think we went over it pretty well. Like I said, we kind of focused more on the draft grade thing. So this is going to be looking at more of the overall team. And with that being said, like I might talk a little bit about future assets and stuff. But when I'm doing power rankings, my power rankings are strictly off. Do I think you're going to win this year? So I
Okay.
might talk nicely about a team that is 13th or 14th in the rankings that I think has some decent trade chips and value. But you're 13th and 14th in the rankings because I think that's where you are in terms of competitiveness, you know. So my rankings are going to be strictly based off that. So it'll be interesting. I think it'll be the eight. I kind of talked to you a little bit pre-show. I think that like
Mhm.
it's tough to gauge, but like the 8 through 14 range is a lot closer. I think this year, but it'll be tight.
Yeah, I feel like it might be a little bit tighter, but I still feel like there's still a clear hierarchy. I feel like there's still
Yep.
haves and have-nots, and honestly, I feel like the draft didn't really change that a whole lot. I feel like I actually was creating my playoff teams from last year, and I went to like delete my six playoff teams that I predicted last year in our last post-draft pod. And I went to delete the teams, and spoiler alert, it's the exact same six teams for me. My playoff predictions from last year and my playoff predictions for this year are the exact same six teams. So I doubt anybody remembers what those six teams were and if I was right or not, but that's going to be kind of is what it is. So I mean, some of
Yeah,
that
my
is just going to be like owners I trust to make the right decisions versus owners that I not so much make the right decisions. But like the haves are still the haves and the have-nots are still the have-nots for the most part.
And that's the fun thing too, is you mentioned the kind of owner trust. And now that we've done this, a decent amount of years now, cheers on another season here. We're getting
Oh
kicked
yeah.
off and rolling. It's kind of fun to do that. And I think that's why in the football league, when we've drafted divisions and had, you do kind of have that a little bit into perspective,
Hmm.
um, of how these guys, like, I know Krim's going to make a lot of trades. If I like his team on paper, do I trust him to make his trades? Do I trust Bryce to make his trades?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. Do I trust Peter to make any trades? When
Yeah.
he needs to make a trade. So you start getting into kind of the way the owners work and stuff like that. So it's fun. It's a little bit of
Mhm.
mixing and matching of both for sure.
Yeah, so as we look, we have clearly a hierarchy forming here. Eric, number one team in the power rankings right now, then Dave, then Jordan. Nope, just kidding. Those are just our current standings, not our power rankings.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah, we have
I have
Eric.
not even
I'll tell you,
touched
what,
that
got
screen yet. It is wait. I don't touch that screen till like
oh,
three
this is
weeks
like the
in.
funnest time of year is
No.
overreacting to what's going on. I got to make like six trades before the weekend ends. I'm all
Oh
down
my
here in
god.
13th place. It's looking brutal for your boy here. I
I don't
know
even like I
the
said, I
league
don't
hates
even
to see it.
touch that screen until May, dude. You just can't overanalyze. I
Oh,
don't
that
even look
there's
at
so much fun in over analysis. Come on now.
it. Hey, that's what we're
Um,
doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're here. We're here to overanalyze. We're here to make bold takes. We're here to talk trash and say a bunch of shit that's probably all going to come true because we're getting pretty good at this. Looking at some of our bold takes year to year, I'm not going to lie. We have a lot of hits. We are definitely always right about everything. Is what I'll say.
Totally.
And that'll be the
Just
last thing
like
I
the
say about
internet.
that. Yep. Internet and AI and Facebook is always right about everything, from what I hear. The Facebook moms of Facebook. All right. So we'll kind of talk about some of the trades as we kind of go through. There has been 7 trades since the draft, so that's good. Usually the pod usually churns some good movement around the league. So here we have our trade screen, but maybe we'll just kind of go through one by one to see if there as we're going team by team here and see if there's any moves that move the needle or not. So we are going to go through our power rankings. I think we're just going to jump right in. I I guess before we jump in, I guess there's one question I had to ask is do you feel any differently about any like major takeaways on general draft stuff, any like general rosters or anything that really like popped out to you as like, okay, these last 2 weeks have really changed my view about this.
Um,
I can go first if you want a sec to think about that. I feel like
sure.
for me, the pitching landscape has kind of changed a little bit because look, combing through some of the teams where I like really wasn't really happy with some of the team pitching staffs and what they look like, I've actually kind of taken some left turns on some of these rosters that I feel good about or don't feel good about based on their pitching. Because now that we kind of have set in stone what the rosters look like, we have more data on spring training and just general ideas of what each pitcher is bringing, I can kind of see a little bit more of a clearer path for some teams to be relevant, actually, that I didn't really see before. So I think my view on pitching has kind of changed a little bit, but I still feel like it's, I think the offense is a little bit harder to come by than pitching right now.
You think offense is going to be harder to come by? Yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's always that way at the start of the year.
yeah, to start the year for sure, because it's harder to trust.
Pitchers are always ahead of hitters to start the year. And then summer comes around, the hitters catch up and pitchers start getting lit up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So it's always tough because, yeah, it's hard as heck to find waiver pitchers when you start getting into the June, July months of the waiver wire. But
Mhm.
nothing too much sticks out in the last couple weeks. Like I said, you're going to have some spring injuries. Some guys went down, obviously. The big one was obviously Cole for Krim. That was really
Mhm.
rough. That hurts. But there's always going to be a couple big ones in spring that's going to change it a little bit. But and it would have been interesting because if that would have happened post draft, to do some of those pitchers like you mentioned, Castillo, you thought was going to go for 40 with Cole gone back in. Does that make someone push that to 35, 40 if the draft happens at? Those are kind
Yeah.
of interesting ways to look at it. So
Mhm.
I don't know, but yeah, nothing too much has changed. Kind of like what you said, honestly. I don't think the draft actually moved my rankings off a whole lot. I think some
Mhm.
dudes drafted a little bit better than others, and it kind of shifted a little bit, but nothing
And
too
unfortunately, that
crazy.
was just the circumstance of not really having the amount of star-driven talent in some of the rosters
Yeah,
that were already preloaded that just weren't going to be knocked off their pedestals.
right. And this is typically now that this is our second cycle, I guess, going through like a 1, 2, 3 year kind of cycle of a league. Um, it's kind of interesting to see that the second year cycle usually is the one that has the least amount of players. I remember this was
Hmm.
the year that was the Cedric Mullins, year, and
Yeah.
there was, I think, better talent this time around for sure.
It was Mullins and Michael Harris, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was our second year in the league, and and the third year, like I said, I think more dudes are going to get thrown back in when you're talking about a $43 player compared to a 48 or a 45 to I think that 30 to a 35, you might start seeing more of those dudes get thrown back in. So who knows? It'll be a chance for them to load up, but hey, 2025 now.
You are a big cycle guy when it comes to like this 3 year cycle thing. And I think there is some merit to it. But the longer this league goes on, the more that cycle will flatten out a little bit. But I also feel like, yeah, it wasn't like it was last year where it was like the big throwback year, but it's not like there wasn't superstar talent available in the draft. I mean, there was what, 2 first round talents in Julio and in Tatis, and then
And
you
why
had
were
two.
they first round talents? Because they were C contracts and they had to get
Yeah.
thrown back in because they were
Hmm.
kept for 3 years.
No, 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 yeah, but I mean, like, we're talking about like not being amongst the others that were
Sure,
within the ones that were last year's
right.
players that were in the draft, and then you also have like Strider and Acuna, who will also be kind of superstar level talent, who we might see in the first round again next year as first level talent type players. So like the longer this goes on, if those 4 players are back in the player pool 3 years from this year, then we're going to kind of see more flattening and more players are going to break out at different times. If a Jackson Churio or if a guy that's on a different contract, some of the C players this year that just had big breakouts and
Oh,
kind of
sure.
moved the needle. So
Oh, yeah, you're right
hopefully
there.
over time
Absolutely.
we're going to see a little bit more
I don't know if we'll
major
ever see
flattening
as
of it.
low of a talent draft as that Michael Harris Cedric
No, no,
Williams
no, no. We
one.
never, we never will.
Yeah, that
It,
was, and I think that was the second year, and you're probably right, just because so many, it was a completely fresh, with no, like you said, no variables whatsoever.
mhm.
Um, Second year draft. So,
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's jump into it. We are going to work our way backwards. So we're going to start with our lowest teams in the power rankings. We're going to work our way up. So we actually have a tie. We have the my 14th and your 13th, and then your 14th and my 13th are that makes a tie for who the worst team is. So congratulations to these two teams. You don't get to be the sole last place loser in this power rankings. You guys just get to share the toilet bowl here. And those two teams are going to be Jordan and Peter. So we got Jordan and Peter
oh,
here.
dang, dang, dang.
So anywhere you want to start here?
Well, I got Peter at 14. We can
All
start
right,
there.
let's go Peter. Why don't you tell me why you hate Peter?
um, it, his team's interesting. Before I start with where my rankings are and why, there is a little bit of, like you said earlier, me knowing the owner and switching it around a little bit. And I like we talked about, Peter doesn't really make a lot of trades. Sometimes he will, sometimes it's done too late. But sometimes but remains to be seen. But the way my rankings work is I kind of have a little, kind of what I did last year is I have a little point system where I really look at what would you consider like a plus category. And basically, I made a point system based off that. I also looked at ADP. I'm big on ADP. And I counted how many players you have from 0 to 20, 21 to 40, kind of that sheet I showed with the really bad handwriting, right? All the
Yeah.
way from like 200 to 300, right? So
Hmm.
I got how many players you have in ADP, but I also had how many players do you have that are going to give you plus categories? How many guys are giving you that 25 home runs, 83 runs scored, 80 RBIs, 335 OBP, and at least
Is that
21.
is it arbitrary or where'd you get those numbers from?
I got it from, they're the top 40 in that spot. So
Okay.
41 players hit 25 homers, 40 players had 83 runs, 43 players had 80. So
You
I'm not
came
saying it's a
prepared, my guy.
plus plus, but I'm looking at it as you are contributing in that category
Yeah.
in a
Okay.
good spot. Kind of like you're an above war player.
Yeah.
And same with OBP. There was 42 players last year that had a 335 OBP, and there was 43 players that had 21 steals last year. So it's
Okay.
pretty much you're all in the top 40 if you're giving a plus category there.
Okay.
And the
Makes
way,
sense.
and so I kind of counted up those points on that. Now, Peter does not have the least amount of points there. He's got 24 points when it comes to plus categories. But the reason I'm not a huge fan of Peter's team is just because there's a lot of hit or miss here. If you're really looking at it from top to bottom, I like Adley, I like Austin Riley, I like Chirion, I like Judge. After that, I'm really worried about it. I really am. I mean, I don't know if there's enough depth there. There's definitely not much of a bench right now as we begin the season, in terms of the offense. And pitching wise, I think there's stuff to like. You got to love Paul Skeens. I think you got to like Schwallen back. We'll see over the course of a season. When Otani gets in there, I still think he's a great fantasy pitcher when you get him in every 6 days when he finally gets going. But again, after that, I'm a little worried. Glasnow's a big injury concern. Nicholas hasn't been the same in a while. Fat, I don't mind. Not bad. But I don't know. I don't think he's actually the worst talented team, but I think
Yeah.
there's just not enough here. And with the lack of, I know he's not going to make trades really too much when the thing goes bad. Maybe he will. We could shock us. But overall, that's kind of my reason I'm low on Peter's team this year. I don't think it's got a ton of talent. It's got a couple superstars, but it really lacks kind of the meat in the middle there.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been like the calling card for Peter is he kind of takes this stars and scrubs approach. And you look at some of the players he has, and he acquired Austin Riley before the draft. He went all in on one of the top catchers, spending $19 on a catcher. He got Luis Robert and Aaron Judge and Churio and Glasnow and Schwellenbach. And these are all high risk, high reward players. Those are players that have injury profiles. Luis Robert, Austin Riley last year, although most for the most part of his career he's been relatively healthy, but an expensive player. Aaron Judge, and then who was the other one? Luis Robert, obviously injury history. Schwallenbach hasn't really pitched 180 innings. You have Tyler Glass now, injury history, obviously there. Paul Skeens, who's a second year player now. Brian Wu injury history. Otani already hurt. McClanahan already hurt and coming off Tommy John. So like he has this stars and scrubs approach, but then he doesn't fill out the roster with depth pieces that will help him. And he's still taking like the approach of like he's going to draft Colson Montgomery, who's not in the major league. He's got Quintana, who's not on the major league roster. He went and picked up Alex Vesia, who's the fourth string closer for the Dodgers when he probably needs a better depth piece than that. And so it's hard for me to look at this roster and I do have him a spot higher than yours because like I don't know how you can look at this pitching staff and not think like this isn't going to be one of our top maybe top five pitching staffs with the upside that it has between I mean Paul Skeens best pitcher in Major League Baseball probably this year. You got Schwellenbach who I really like this year. Tyler Glass now who when he's on the mound is one of the best pitchers in baseball. Like having those big three there. Brian Wu who had a really great statistical season last year. He's currently healthy. So having those four, I mean, that's
Yeah,
probably the best top four, maybe arguably, yeah, in the league, but it doesn't round out because Bautista, I don't know if he's thrust right into the role right away. And he doesn't have like I don't know if he has even one closer because Bautista, kind of talked about easing him in a little bit. I don't know if he's gonna be right in the closer. He was close to not even making the opening day roster. So he doesn't have a single closer. Maybe he has one in Bautista. Then he's got Fott and Mikolas, who I don't love here, rounding out the rotation, kind of dragging him down. And then, as you said, yeah, he has the stars approach, stars and scrubs, but then like the scrubs are pretty scrubby between Gavin
yeah,
Lux and Jackson Holiday and Carlos Santana and guys that I'm not really sure what the contribution levels are going to be. As of right now, I have Peter higher because as his team currently stands, he has enough pitching talent. He has enough hitting talent between some of the upside guys that he has while they're healthy. They're not all going to be healthy. And when that happens, I just don't know really what this team's going to end up doing because, as you said, I don't trust Peter lately to make the corresponding move. So this is not a perfect roster. It has flaws. It needs a closer or two. It needs some better pitching depth. It needs hitting depth and to kind of fill in some of those gaps there of a little bit of a flawed roster. But as of right now, this is probably like a top eight offense and a top five pitching staff
yeah.
minus the closer. It the upside is kind of capped with some of its gaps, and I'm with you. I'm not really trusting Peter to fill in those gaps with the way he's kind of played the last couple of years.
And a couple things to note too, like I said, he's only got, and this is going off 2024 stats, by the way. What I kind of looked at with my stuff, I didn't go off projections. Sometimes the projections can be a little wonky. He has one guy projected for or that had over 83 runs. And granted, so if they're rookies and they're expected, they're not going to count on this. Or if they were injured on the season and they didn't get 83, they're not technically not going to be up on here. But Peter had one guy over 83 runs last year, one guy over 80 RBIs, and one guy with a 335 OVP or higher last year. I mean, that's just not enough. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just not enough to keep going.
Hmm.
Also, depth wise, when we're talking about 150 to 300 OBP, we're talking like that. The depth and the depth is huge. I mean, I've one thing I've noticed in the last couple of years in this league is you need to have depth. You're gonna have dudes getting hurt. Your IL list is
Hmm.
gonna be full. I like it because it's like managing a team, right?
Yeah.
Um, Peter has seven guys between 150 and 300 ADP, and that is the least amount in the league.
Hmm.
The least amount. Um,
Yeah. Because
every
anything
other
post
team, every
300,
other
you're
team has
like,
more than
that's
that.
guys that aren't even playing full time. Those are your platoon bats and your real flyers,
Exactly, for sure. And
your
when you're
fifth
at
guy in the
150,
rotation kind of stuff.
you're still decent starters. But yes, when you're getting towards, I know there's a huge gap there, but from 150 to 300, when that's really, they always say those middle rounds win your championships or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, he's got seven dudes, which is like I said, least than anybody in the league. So
Ooh, Mookie Betts takes that for a ride. Back to the warning track. Go! Attaboy, Mookie. I don't care how much he weighs, he can still yank that ball.
heck yeah, man.
Um, yeah, so it's hard to imagine like what the one thing that I'm probably going to talk about a lot with a few teams is like what is the path here? So like what is the path here for Peter being a relevant team? Like because like what yeah, we talk about like what trades he hasn't made, but like what trades should he make right now? Is he going to trade away from some like the star pitching to kind of trade down? Is he going to trade maybe one of these injured guys like an Otani or a McClanahan to try and get maybe a closer or whatever else? Like I sent him I messaged him about like because I got obviously closers to boot and I was like, hey, like I'm just looking for like an offensive piece or something like maybe like a Lane Thomas or something for one of these closers. And he's like, oh no, I don't really value closers. And then he goes and picks up Vicia, and I'm like, okay, like I guess you don't really. value closes, but you're gonna go pick up Vicia, okay. And then he kind of never got back to me on that. So, there was some interest there, but it just, didn't really come through. So, I'm not really sure what the move is for Peter, but I think that as it currently stands, it's an okay team. I think it'll be competitive for a little bit, but yeah, I just don't think it's going to maintain.
No,
All right, so we're gonna move to our next Jordan team, not Crimmy, Jordan,
the other
who
Jordan,
who I have been adamant,
the
who
reigning champ, dude, is
the
at
reigning champ,
13.
the disrespect. Not tied for 14, tied for 13, tied for 14.
Yeah.
Depending on how you look at it. Yeah, he's scraping off the bottom of the barrel here. Yet I have been very vocal about of not liking this team, and you finally jumped aboard here. You've moved him down quite a few spots since the draft and everything like that.
We
I
never had rankings at the
We never had
draft.
rankings, but you were a little bit more optimistic on his team after some of the trades he's made and all that kind of stuff. And you didn't give him that brutal. Did you remember what your draft grade for him was, or whatever it
No, I
was?
don't. I didn't love it.
Yeah. So I just look at this team and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I don't I look across this roster and some of the moves that he's made, and I guess we can kind of get into the trades here and just remind me in a sec to go over the trades. But I look at the way this team currently stands and I'm like, okay, there's some okay players here, but there's no star power here. You have Jordan and that's it. And I'm sure you'll get into the top 100 players and stuff like that because I'm assuming it's just the one. So he doesn't have that. He has players. Not only does he not have the star power, but he's got a lot of guys in his lineup that I don't really expect to contribute a lot from a fantasy standpoint. From Bryson Stott, who I'm not sure he's a full-time player, who didn't really finish off the year strong last year, only hit 11 home runs, 15 the year before. You have a guy like Arenado coming off a bad year. Mason Wynn, who wasn't very good last year, who had a not so good OBP, only 15 home runs, 57 RBIs. Willie Abreu, who's probably not a full-time player. Stephen Kwan, who's not a power hitting guy. Tyler Fitzgerald, who's not a power hitting guy. Kerry Carpenter, who's not like a full-time player. And it's just like there's holes all over this roster, and there's not like the star power to like even like pick it up. And even guys like Brendan Donovan, like they're all okay pieces, but they're not pieces that come together in a way that makes sense to be a good fantasy team. It's not looking good. You move over to the rotation, and like, yeah, it has guys here and it has some upside, some floor guys, some upside in Sasaki and Job, and Flaherty. Flaherty's on his bench right now. So like it has some upside and then some floor guys in Gray and Webb, which is like decent. It's not tops, but like there's some floor here with the pitcher staff, which isn't brutal, isn't bad, but I do not see any path here for this team to be relevant where it needs to be. I said that the ceiling for him is like the sixth seed, and I guess I'll kind of stick to that. I mean, he'll make his trades. Maybe he can find a way to weasel his way into the sixth seed with some favorable matchups, but it's not looking good for your boy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think we kind of highlighted that a little bit with the trades he made in the offseason. There was a couple that we didn't like, but there was a couple that were like, it's okay, but like I like it more for the other team. And when you do that enough times, I think you kind of diminish your team. And I think that's kind of what happened a little bit. And I didn't love his draft. I know Willier Blurry is off to a great start and stuff, but I think that was still one of the bigger overpays. And he didn't really get that star power in the draft. He traded away stars throughout the offseason. He did pick up Alvarez for me, obviously, at one point. But you're right. I mean, you mentioned I was going to say the ADP thing. Again, he has the least amount of players from, like you said, from 0 to 100 in ADP. Again, in the league, the least amount there. So it just lacks the only bright spot I can see in the path for this team is if everything goes right pitching, because I don't hate Webb, Sasaki, and Gray as a 1, 2, 3, and then
We
a
shouldn't be
Job.
talking about our current third place team like this.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And then Job and Sasaki, or Job and Rodon, like the rotation does actually have some promise there. But again, I still think it's apt to fall off. I could see Rodon having a 4.2 ERA in New York. I could see Sonny Gray, 35 years old. Cardinals are going to suck. Okay. Logan Webb's not your big strikeout, mow him down ace. He's just very
Mhm.
consistent, very good pitcher. But I don't know if I'd quite say, top 10, 15 pitchers. So, that's the bright spot, because it's
Mhm.
Yordan Alvarez, and honestly, I mean, really looking at this, I think this is one of the worst offenses in the league, because
Yeah.
it's Yordan Alvarez and Spencer Steer is probably your second best hitter.
Yeah.
And I like Spencer Steer, but that's not good. I mean, literally looking at the season stats from last year, he has one guy Sorry, two guys that hit 20 or more home runs last year, and it's literally Alvarez and then Steer had 20.
Well, you
That's
could say
it.
one guy that hit more than 20.
Yeah, one guy that hit more than 20. Not a single guy had 100 RBIs.
Yeah.
One had 90. I mean, it's just lacking way too much. I think he made. I just. I don't like this team. Maybe he can prove me wrong. Like you said, he's going to make trades, but I just think there's a lot
He does
wrong
have
with it.
Vinny. He's going to be pissed that we haven't mentioned that he has Vinny P on his bench, Vinny Pasquantino. So I mean that'll make it a little bit better, but
Yeah, the
that's
97 RBIs there.
Vinny
I
P's not
didn't
going to
see
save
that.
your
Yeah.
season
Yeah,
when it looks
Pasquin.
this
Yeah, I
way.
did see the nine. Yeah, the 97 there. Yeah, but like he's. I mean, he's got a lot of bench pieces too, and he's got a couple prospects and this and that. But I don't know, man. I think the pitching has to be perfect in order for him to compete.
So looking at the trades he's made, he traded away Tanner Bybee and got Vinny Pasquantino. So that will help him in that department because he had the pitching to boot, and so he traded away Bybee, got Pasquantino. I don't really love the value. I actually like that a lot more for Tyler, because I think that Bybee has more value than Pasquantino. I think Bybee's primed for a breakout year this year as kind of the ace for Cleveland, and I actually overlooked his stats the offseason. He actually had a really solid year last year. With 173 innings, over strikeout inning, 187 strikeouts, 3.4 ERA, 1.11 WHIP, and only 12 wins quality starts, but I'd
Yeah,
expect that to go up.
pretty low for that line. You think there'd
It
be
looked
more
he had
quality
12 wins
starts?
total. So did he not have a quality start that wasn't a win? Because he had 12 wins and only. Oh no,
Sometimes they
no.
count. He has
Okay, I'm
some.
looking at that. I'm looking at that wrong. they don't have wins quality
No.
starts here in this column. Interesting. That's strange. But yeah, so like I like Bybee. I wish he could have gotten a little bit more than Pasquantino for him because this needs team needs a little bit more help. He's gonna need to like package a few guys here. And so then he made this other trade here with Chad, where he traded away Gallon, Christopher Sanchez, Encarnacion Strand, and Anthony Volpe, and got back Flaherty, Colt Keith, Mason Wynn, and Sonny Gray. Now I've made my stance on this trade pretty clear in the chat, and he pushed back on me as he always does. But I did not like this trade for him at all because I just thought that he got rid of a lot of upside in Volpe, Encarnacion Strand, Sanchez, and Gallon. Like Gallon, former ace, depending on who you ask, coming off a not so great year, and Christopher Sanchez, who's primed for a breakout. I like him. Encarnacion Strand playing with the Reds has some upside, not like moving the needle for me. Not gonna cry over Christopher or Christian Encarnacion Strand. And Volpe, who has some upside, but then he just traded for a bunch of guys that just aren't really fantasy guys. Colt Keith is not a fantasy asset. Mason Wynn could have a decent year this year. That's like the nicest thing I can say about him, but was pretty bad last year. And we kind of hashed out what I expect from Mason Wynn this year. Sonny Gray is
No, I think we
like,
need to discuss Mason Win more. I don't think he's been discussed enough.
yeah, you don't think so? Sonny Gray, decent player, but like I just don't really think that I like to build around guys like Sonny Gray, with a 3.8 ERA. Man, he had a really actually solid year last year.
I
I
know.
shouldn't
I think he was the
disrespect Sonny
best
Gray the way I do.
statistically. I think he was the best pitcher in the deal.
Yeah, potentially. Man, he had 203 strikeouts in 166 innings, which is weird because that strikeout count is like almost a complete outlier for his career. I guess maybe Cincinnati had some good strikeout numbers. So maybe that's maybe the where the disrespect comes from is me not seeing more in Sonny Gray. But I mean, I think that that's kind of what Zach Gallen did like 2 years ago is basically what Sonny Gray.
Oh yeah, I mean if Zach
2 years
Gallen
ago,
goes
Zach
back to
Gallen
what he
had
did,
struck out 220,
yeah.
with similar ratios than what that did. So if Gallon kind of gets back to form, so I think that's why I think I did say like Gallon and Gray is kind of like a relative wash. I thought
Yep.
that Sanchez and Flaherty, I would give the edge to probably Flaherty, maybe. I can't remember what I said though in the chat. But then Volpe, I like
I
Volpe
would give
better
it to
than
Flaherty
Win,
off it,
and
yeah, yeah.
Encarnacion better than Keith. I mean, Flaherty coming off what he did last year.
Well, and I also like Volpe. Too. I mean, we're forgetting about Volpe. I don't know what the age Mason Win is, but Volpe's like 22, 23
Yeah,
years old. I mean, they might be the exact same age, and Volpe's been playing for 2 years already. I like the Yankees lineup more. He's 23.
23. Yeah,
I bet you Volpe might be the same age.
yeah. I mean, I like the lineup context of both 23.
Yeah, so to me, Volpe's played for 2 years already. This is year three. Who's more primed for? We talk about Mason Wynn being primed for more of a breakout. Volpe's in the Yankees line. I'm taking Volpe every day of the week over Mason Wynn. So to
Like
me, that was
Volpe's
everyone kind of
line
focused
last year of 12 home runs and 28 steals is basically what you're hoping to get out of Win this year is 12 home
exactly.
runs and 28
And
steals.
are you
It's basically
trusting
what he did
that in?
last year.
Are you trusting that more in the Yankee lineup or a St. Louis lineup? I'm definitely
Yeah.
trusting it more in a Yankee lineup.
Yeah, because
And
because even last year, Volpe had 90 runs and 60 RBIs. Wynn's not
yeah,
getting that, especially if he's the nine hitter. Even if he was like the cleanup hitter for or the three hitter for the
right.
Cardinals, he's not getting those kind of numbers.
And that's what I'm saying. That's why I didn't think the trade was as bad as people were making it out to be because I agree. I immediately thought, hey, pitchers for the most part kind of a wash. But to me, it was the shortstop difference where I was like, wow, that's really
Mhm.
interesting because Wynn played a full year and literally, I'll say it was pretty much fantasy unstartable. That would not
Mhm.
have played in my lineup. That shouldn't have
Correct.
played in Jordan's lineup
Correct.
in his championship lineup last year. It's a very solid reserve guy you could throw in there a week or two, but
He's a bench bat.
none of those stats play at like
So
in
in a
the
full
fantasy
season, he
lineup.
played 150 games. He played a full season, 580 at bats.
The
He
runs,
had
that's it. The runs,
85 runs, 15 homers, 57 RBIs, and 11 steals in a 314 OBP. But
yeah,
he's also not going to score
and getting caught
85 runs
almost
as the nine hitter.
yeah, and getting caught almost half the time you're stealing. I know that's not good. So the fact that people are like thinking 30, 35, he got caught half the time he tried stealing. Like
Mhm.
unless he works on something and or something magical that I don't know, I just don't see that happening.
Well,
So
they said his goal is to steal 40, and I think everybody lost their minds when they say, "Oh yeah, my goal is to steal 40," and everybody freaked out. That, oh, he's going to
yeah,
steal 40 this year. Well, like, yeah, if he gets caught stealing 20 times out of those 40, then he's A, he's not going to
yeah,
steal
he's
40, and
not
B,
gonna.
the Cardinals aren't going to let him. They're not going to
Yeah,
give him
this
the
ain't the
green light.
'80s when you could get caught 25 times a year and it was a okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Overall, like I said, I don't think it was a horrible trade in that remark. But the team, in all of all, I just think I know we've used the term blah a lot in this league over the years, but this truly is to me just like a very like
I was thinking the same thing, especially this off.
it's
I
got a
think I would go out on a limb and
superstar.
say
It's
this
got
is
some
the worst
names we
offense in the
know.
league. This has to be the worst offense in the league. I can't think of a team with a worse offense.
Yeah. I mean, it's brutal unless Nolan Arenado turns back the clock a couple years.
He needs
And
a
I mean,
lot of things to go right.
and here's the thing: I love Jordan. I think he's a top 10 player in the league too. But let's not forget, I know he missed some time last year, but he didn't even get 100 RBIs last year. He didn't
Look
hit
at all,
45.
but even if Arenado, Alvarez, and Vinny P all get 100 RBIs, there's still so many guys here that are gonna get low RBI totals
Yeah,
between Bryson Stott and Mason Wynn and Steven Kwan and Tyler Fitzgerald. Like none of
yeah,
those guys aren't just gonna have like average RBIs. Those are gonna have low RBIs, 50, 60 RBI guys.
yeah.
So like
I
it
mean,
just
Wilmer
balances
Abreu
out to
was
be
60 RBIs last year.
bad.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I don't see it. So unless he can trade away some of this pitching and get hitting and then hit on more pitching, but he also doesn't have any pitching depth. So I
no.
don't really know what that looks like because it's he can't trade away
Use it
pitching
as
without
fuel,
depth.
Jordan. Use it as fuel. Take this and use it.
He also only has one closer. So and Diaz, even if he does come back, that I'm a two closer guy. I feel like every champion, every competitive team we've had has had two closers in the history of
At
this
least at
league.
some
So.
point in the year.
Yeah, and then going into the playoffs, and like I think that versatility of rolling out I can't remember. He rolled out a few closers or a few starters, or just having the versatility to make adjustments, and that the halfway through that week in the playoffs is huge too. So
Oh
having
yeah.
flexibility to do that. All right. Next in our power rankings, we're gonna go to our 12th ranked power rank team. This guy's not going to be happy about this. It is going to be Crim's crew. I was high on his draft. I liked what he did in the draft, and you were a little bit more apprehensive. And I think now I've kind of come around to not really liking it as much. He even made a really solid trade after the draft with Chad here. So if we click
Yeah.
on Crim's cruise team, because Crim likes to trade, we know that he's made 3 trades since the draft. He
Shocked.
he traded away Presley, Ian Happ, and Mason Wynn, and got back Francisco Lindor and Christian Campbell. So not only did he get Lindor, Campbell's also looking like a great good get in that trade. So huge, massive win for him there. I don't really know how much there is to add there, other than I'm not really high on Presley. I think he's not going to keep the role. Happ is a solid contributor, and Mason Wynn. Do you want to talk a little bit more about Mason Wynn?
Yeah.
Um, and then he flipped. He turned Hunter Green into Altuve, and then he turned Jock Peterson into Eduardo Rodriguez. So two trades that I mean the top one, Peterson for Eduardo Rodriguez, I think two bench bats there. The Green into Altuve is kind of questionable. What'd you make about that trade?
I don't hate it. I mean, Hunter Green's potential. I mean, last year he did finally put it all together. He had the low ERA, he had the
Hmm.
strikeouts. So if he does that again, it's going to be hard to swallow because I think Altuve, I don't really think can come up from where he's kind of been the last few years. It's not like he's magically going to, go MVP for him. But I do know, and we'll probably talk about it when we see it. Krim lacked a whole lot of outfield depth.
Hmm.
And the fact that Altuve is going to get outfield eligibility is going to help him because at some point after the draft, he had three dudes, his outfielders, all had 400, less than 400 at bats last year. They were
Wow.
all in platoons.
Hmm.
So he really needed that outfield depth. So I think overall, Green, if he was to repeat this year, I do think he's going to be the better player. But again, I think it is a close to, you're getting a great hitter for a great pitcher swap.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the value kind of adds up here. I think that Altuve is being drafted ahead of Hunter Green, so if you kind of look at it from that point of view, I feel like
Yeah.
maybe Altuve is a better player. Plus, like, I feel like at this point the offense is more important than the pitching. So I kind of like that for him. And even though these trades, like he's made a couple trades that seem to have improved his team, he got the better end of them. I look at the sum of all the parts here, and I'm really not liking it. So I guess I'll start with the pitching staff. I'm very underwhelmed by this pitching staff, and I thought I kind of liked it at first glance, but Jordan Romano got blew up in his first appearance. Mason Miller, he'll be great. He'll be one of the best relievers in the league, but I don't really have a lot of confidence in Romano. And then I look across and I'm like, Kikichi, Eduardo Rodriguez, Nestor Cortez, Barrios lit up again. Like those are all guys that are currently in his rotation. He doesn't have any other bench guys here. Like I think this is probably our worst pitching staff in the league. The offense is okay. It's decent. It's pretty well rounded, pretty solid actually.
Yeah.
From the moves that he's made has really addressed the offense. But now it's like you swing back and you go, man, this team needs pitching.
Yeah, and to me, I completely agree with you. I think it does need pitching. I like Barrios and Castillo, but we've also seen years where Barrios and Castillo have, quite frankly, been a 4 or 5 kind of pitcher. I mean, they both
Hmm.
had 4+ ERA seasons and stuff like that. So I like them both. I just don't know how much I trust them. So then, when your backup plan is a Nestor Cortez, who's really put it together for 1 year, Kikuchi, who's 33, Eduardo Rodriguez, who's coming off a huge injury where he barely pitched last year.
Hmm.
It's tough. Like I said, I don't love the pitching. I don't. Hitting wise, like you said, I think he's gonna get by with it. But again, I think kind of in the same. I think the hitting's more talented, but I can almost say the exact same thing in regards to a lot of his hitters. What Nick Castellanos are we gonna get? What Alex Bregman are we gonna get? What Ozzy Albus are we gonna get? He's had bad years before. In his time last year, Ozzy Albus was not a good player in 400 at bats.
This
He was
team
not.
has like no youth on it. It's like
Yeah,
all veterans.
yeah. And that's what I'm saying. Paul Goldschmidt. Everyone's saying he's going to bounce back in New York short. What if he doesn't? What if he's Paul Goldschmidt from last year again? To me, there's just a lot there. And I think Lindor was a great pickup. I like that
Hmm.
trade. And I think he should do just as good as last year, if not better, with Soto in that lineup. But Lindor probably had the best year of his career last year. So what if he doesn't this year? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think there's just a lot riding on it. There's just too many hit or misses. Altuve's 35. He's only getting older. Like you said, there's not a whole lot of youth on this team. So, um, I just think it's fine. I think if everyone played well and kind of bounced back, yeah, if Goldschmidt hit 30 and Bregman hit 30 and Castellanos hit 25 or 30, yeah, this team could be solid. But I just don't think all those things happen.
So looking at this team though, like, so he needs to address the pitching staff. He needs some more upside arms because I feel like there's just not a lot of upside here. Like, yeah, Barrios might be okay, Castillo might be okay, and but like I don't see where the upside. Like Eduardo Rodriguez might be okay. I don't think he will be, but same thing with Kikichi. I just don't really see the upside there. But like, what offensive pieces are even expendable? Because like he can't really trade Lindor, Robles, or Altuve because he's really thin on steals actually. When you look at it a little bit closer, with he's got Fried a little bit, and then like the bench isn't really. There's nobody on this bench that I'm like you got to get him into the lineup somewhere. Like I really feel good about starting him. I guess you could maybe get O'Hearn in there if he's gonna be the cleanup hitter for Baltimore as a first baseman outfielder, and then maybe trade one of the other first baseman outfielders. But I'm not really sure like where. where the trade happens here. I'm sure he'll find a way to make 16 more trades, but it's just hard to imagine what it's going to actually look like, what the expendable pieces are here, to kind of address it. So I know there will be several moves that'll be made, but it's hard to see like with this pitching staff. I do not see the enough upside here for this team to make any noise really.
It's
And
kind of one of those everything has to go right teams again. I mean, again, I like the offense, a lot of good names, but everything's kind of got to go right for a lot of those aging guys. Same with pitching. You're going to need Castillo and Barrios to pretty much
a
have
tall order.
the best kind of some of the better years of their career. So
There's some teams that we can point at where like, yeah, you need like one or two things to go right. Like, yeah, you need your SP2 to like really play well, and that can
right,
kind of change things for you. Yeah. This team needs a lot of hopes and prayers. For a lot of like because they're veterans, like it's guys that have done it before at some point in their careers, but I just don't think there's enough left in the tank, especially some of these older guys. Like I don't know if Bregman has another gear to go that we haven't like I don't know if there's a 40 home run season in Bregman. Like
not
Goldschmidt,
anymore.
I don't know if he's gonna like at 37, 38, if he's gonna kind of take it up another notch. I don't know if Cal Raleigh has another notch to take it up to.
We need to
Um,
finally see this Taj
so
Bradley we've been hearing about for a couple of years do something,
yeah,
right? I mean, that's a hope, but
yeah, maybe. So and yeah, I don't love it. And AJ Puck, I will think will get some saves, but I also think that there might not be clarity in that Arizona bullpen for a while. So that was our number 12. Did you want to go through any like the top 100 or anything like that? Did you talk about any of that with
a little. He has four, or he actually has six dudes in the
no?
top 100, which actually compares favorably to some teams. Which is actually more than Chad has. Okay, but it's just one of those things where again that I think the depth matters and stuff like that. And like I said, it's very average, but yeah, overall he's got three there. And my points for the thing he's got again pretty average with some other teams. He's got 35. We're gonna see some teams that are way higher that's got between 36 to 40. So again, like I said pre-draft, I do think six through what are we at 11 right now?
We are at that was 12.
That was 12. I
We're
do
about to
think
get to 11.
six through 11, 6 through 12 is it's closer than 1 through 5. I really think there's 1 through 5. There's this big gap. I'll be honest, and then there's 6 through 12. So there's definitely some spots to be open for the playoffs, but
Mhm.
yeah. So not totally unforeseeable, but it's not bright for Crimmy.
This next team coming in at number 11 is feels like a misfit toy. It's a team that I don't really know where to put him in the rankings. I'm not really thrilled about where he ended up. I don't really think this is our 11th best team, to be honest. It's just a team that I'm having a hard time figuring out what this team is going to end up being. You're lower on this team than I am. You have this team as your number 12 team. I have this team as my number 9 team, so I'm higher on it. So let me ask you to take the lead here, and you tell me what you don't like about the Wahoo Maniacs, why you have them all the way down at 12, and then I'll try and see if I can kind of build it up a little bit here.
All right, this is the part that was really tough. Like I said, this part of the thing was tough for me to really get a gauge on. But here's the main thing that stuck out for me. Was again based on my system, and it worked decent last year. I'm not totally basing it off that, like I said, but based on my system, he had the least amount of plus category contributors, and it really wasn't even all that close somehow. I
Really?
mean, he had
Hmm.
20 points when it came to plus category contributors. Now, I do think he's got stars. He's got Bryce Harper. He's got Trey Turner. Now obviously again, but Trey Turner had 500 at bats
So
last year and
hang
only
on,
19.
pause for because I'm so your point system is you counted every time a player hit in that top 40 category. So if we had like Fernando Tatis, if he hit that four different categories, you got 4 points for your team.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. So yeah, if you had a player that had 25 home runs, they got a point for that. 83 run point. Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm just adding up all those points
Okay.
essentially. Yep. And Justin had the least amount of points. And the one that really struck, he was kind of close on some of the offensive ones. He was,
Of
he was
anyone. So this is the worst offensive team.
no, not the worst offense. He's actually higher than Peter. He's close on some offenses with Chris and Tyler and stuff like that, and Krim. It was actually the pitching.
Hmm.
The pitching. Now again, this is where the system might be a little janky because Strider didn't pitch a lot last year, so I'm giving him a little bit of a pass here, which is why I didn't rank him lower.
Did
But
you use last year's stats?
Yeah, I didn't use projections.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I used last year's
So
stats.
yeah,
Um,
injured players are going to be
Injured
heavily
players,
because
rookies that are going to play a
because
lot.
this team is that had Bueller injured, had Robbie Ray injured, it had Fitz who is didn't debut last year, who had obviously Spencer Strider who didn't pitch last year, and Dustin May who
Right.
didn't really
Well,
pitch a lot
they
last year.
they
So
all
yeah,
have injury histories. There's a
yeah.
reason they didn't pitch. There's a reason Walker Bueller's barely pitched. There's a reason Dustin May's barely, I mean, they all have huge injury histories, right? I mean, it's got to be a factor. He's got Andrew Painter.
Yes and no, but because like there's no such thing as like a healthy pitcher. Like I don't. It's hard. It's so hard to grade, and that's kind of part of my pitching philosophy this year. It's just like go get pitchers who pitch well when they're healthy, because like any pitcher can get hurt. For the longest time, we thought, oh, Garrett Cole, he's an Iron Man. You can count on him. In the last 2 seasons, he's been hurt. Like I don't really know what it takes to be a healthy pitcher anymore,
Well,
because
here's what I'll say
even
then.
guys that we
Oh, go ahead.
thought would be good bets to be healthy to get innings are not healthy anymore.
True, and I think it can happen to anyone. There's no way of predicting it, but don't put four of those dudes on your team then, right?
But what is it? What is those do? Because even Jacob deGrom had what, 4 or 5 healthy seasons in a row before he had his first injury.
Yeah.
Then
And
he
then
had Tommy John, and then
when
he
he has
had
3 or 4 bad ones in a row,
yeah.
you got to take that, right? I mean,
Yes.
let me just say this real quick. Walker Bueller had 16 starts last year, missed 2023, had 12 the year before. So in 3 seasons, he's had 28 starts, and he had a 4 ERA and a 5.3.
Hmm.
All right. Dustin May's been a top 100
He has
prospect.
injury and performance concerns.
Right. Dustin May's been a top prospect for 5 seasons. He has made 20 starts in 4 years. Okay. Robbie Ray,
I will say this about Dustin May. Dustin May for his career, 191 innings, which is yes, low for a career for a 5-year career. But his career numbers, he has a career 3.1 ERA and a career 1.04 WHIP. So that means that when he is on the mound, he's a very effective pitcher every
the stuff is
year.
always there, but those 48 innings are great. I mean, they get you far. Robbie Ray has pitched 8 starts in 2 years. Okay. Um, Jared Jones, I like the price he got him at, but Jared Jones kind of fell off towards the end of last year. He got off to such a great start. Skeens came in, and Jared Jones was kind of forgotten about. Yeah, he had
Mhm.
more than a strikeout per inning, but the 4.1 ERA, almost the 1.2 whip. Again, are we getting first half Jared Jones or are we getting second half? That's why when I was talking about Justin's team after the draft, I liked a lot of the things he did do. I think Strider at 28 is great. I think, again, Dustin made a dollar like we just talked about. The
Mhm.
stuff's there. Love the move. Heimer, like Andrew, not Heimer, Andrew Vaughn at a dollar. Maybe he actually hits home runs at JJ Bleday, Matt Shaw at a dollar. And then I also think he's got the pieces at the deadline. He's got the superstars. He's got a Trey Turner and a Bryce Harper and a Michael Harris to make Corey Seager to make trades if he needs to. But I just don't trust the pitching at all. And that's why his points were so low because you can't trust the pitching because they're never on the mound.
That's just where I'm gonna have to disagree. Because when we talk about a path, the path is very clear. The path is if 80% of this team stays healthy, and that's like a low bar. 80% of your team staying healthy. Like he can even withstand 1 or 2 of these guys getting hurt and
His
still
staff
have.
isn't even at 80% though. I mean, they've
Not right
not been.
now, but I would expect Strider to be back in about a month and Jones to be back in 2 months. So yeah, I mean, if it happened right now, if Justin May goes down right now, it's not going to look good, or who Robbie Ray goes down. But if he can get through the first month healthy, and then he gets Strider back in a month, then it's like, whoa, look out. It's very clear. Like as this team is currently constructed, like it's a pretty solid team. Like there's a lot of upside here with what these pitchers do. I mean, with Imanaga being a Cy Young finalist last year, pitching the way that he pitched, we obviously know the upside of Robbie Ray and the strikeout total there. We know what the upside of Bueller is. I don't think you're going to get that Bueller ever again, but the upside is there. There's a path there. Andrew Heaney is kind of more of like a floor play. Don't love the guy, but you have him there. So like I feel like the components are good there. Then it just all it has to be like an average rotation, which I think it is. And then if you add Jared or Strider to it in a month, now you're like, okay, now we're kind of cooking. And then in 2 months, if you're able to get Jared Jones back, you're like, okay, now if you start in your rotation, Jared Jones, Strider, Imanaga as guys who could potentially, not as much Jared Jones, but who could be finalists for a Cy Young. Jared Jones, maybe he can take the leap, but coming off injury, you can't really bank on that anymore. And then like either Robbie Ray or May or Bueller become your 4 or 5. Even if one of them gets hurt, you have something here. As you said, the offense kind of has some superstar potential, but it's not. it's not as well rounded as you would have liked. Again, a couple guys that you're not really sure from a fantasy standpoint what you're getting. I'm not sure from a fantasy standpoint what we're getting from Matt Shaw, from Josh Young, from JJ Bleday, from Adolis Garcia, from Garrett Mitchell, from Brandon Lowe. I don't know if he's going to play every day. So from a fantasy standpoint, I'm not really sure what we're getting out of these guys, and I don't know if it's all going to come back or come around to being sustainable enough because I don't think all those guys are going to hit. And so I don't think this is one of our better offenses. And yeah, I do think that there is some star power here, but his stars don't hit home runs the way they need to. Like there's not the bopper here that hits. So like yeah, he has Trey Turner, which is a good solid player. He has Michael Harris, good solid player. He has Corey Seager, good solid player. But none of those players are 40 home run guys. Trey Turner, he is a 21, 26, 21 home run kind of guy. He has Michael Harris, who is a 16, 18, 19 home run guy. And even Corey Seager. Corey Seager is a very solid hitter, one of the best hitters, but he's more of like a Justin Turner type hitter where like he does hit home runs, but it's 30, 33, 33, 16 in a shortened season. So it's not like the 40 home runs that he actually really needs to make up for some of the guys in here, like your Matt Shaws, your Connor Wongs, your Bledays, and all those kind of guys. So I feel like it's a little thin on power, a little thin on upside from an offensive standpoint. Actually, a little bit thin on steals. There's not really a category that this offense really does well when you look at it that way. But I feel like the pitching staff can be elite. There's a path there, but I don't know if there's enough offense, no enough offensive upside for this team to be successful.
Yeah, you pointed out the steals. Yeah, he's got zero dudes that had over 21 last year, which
He's
is
going to kind of
tough.
chunk it because I mean, Adelise is going to steal, Harris is going to steal, Garrett Mitchell I think is going to steal, and Trey Turner is going to steal. Even Matt Shaw is going to steal. So looking at last year's stats, no, but I think if we were to switch this to projections, it would look a little bit better if we
But
said, okay, Harris 20, Mitchell 24, Trey Turner 23, Shaw 28, Harper 11 and stuff. So I think it that's kind of the plan.
yeah, to me, and that's why I don't always go off projections because how do you project a dude? Like Adolis Garcia had almost 600 at bats last year. He had
Hmm.
11 steals. 11.
He's only
How do we
projected for
how do we
nine.
project how do we project that he's now going to get like 25?
He's not. He's projected for nine. Harris is projected for 20.
And again, for a guy that had 440 at bats last year, he had 10 steals and six caught stealing. He's not that great of a stolen base threat.
Yeah, his rate isn't that great. He's fast, but he doesn't have a good steal rate.
And even and again, Trey Turner, he's getting older. I mean, I think if you project his 19 over a full
32 this
season,
year.
you might be at 25, 20, but I don't know. To me, I think Justin, like I said after the draft, I think he's got one of the most interesting teams because I think he really needs to hold on to his cheap contracts because you never know if some of those are going to hit. And if you can have three or four of these $1 to $5 players hit going into the draft next year and then trade, because if someone's competing and they really want it, we've seen in past years someone will trade for that C contract at the deadline and maybe give it, but just a decent keeper to get a Bryce Harper, to get a Corey Seager, to whatever it might be. So I do think Justin's team will have a big impact on this league this year. I just don't know if it's necessarily going to be in the playoff race.
I wonder if there's a way. There is definitely a way. If Justin would consider punting a category, if he could get he only has one closer too, so another team with only one closer. But if the pitching staff hits, he has guys like Corey Seager, Brandon Lowe, and Bryce Harper. I wonder if he could turn Trey Turner into like Correa and a piece. Like if Dana, could go after Trey Turner and a pitching piece, something like that. And then he just were to punt steals. He traded Michael Harris for like a power hitting outfielder. He traded Bryce Harper for like Pete Alonso and a piece or something like that. He just went all in on like power and then punted steals, and then the pitching came around. If that is like a path to success for him, I wonder if that's
Yeah.
something that he would consider because it's hard to imagine like if he sure, you can maybe trade with Krim and get a guy like Victor Robles, but then like I don't think his offense is good enough to sustain at subtracting the pop from that. So I don't know if there's a path for this to be a top seven offense really at all. So I don't know what's going to give here, but it's that part's kind of hard to imagine.
Yeah. Like I said, I think a lot of teams have paths. We've been using that word a lot tonight. Like I said, if all those pitchers stay healthy, Bueller, Imanaga, May, right, yeah, I mean the name they've performed, they've done it at the major league level. But again, Jared Jones might get placed on the 60-day IL. He's got an elbow injury. They're saying he's back in July.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's already starting.
Yep. All right, we're gonna go to our so that was our 11th. So now we're gonna go to our 10th. Our 10th is Dexy Wex over here. Dex is actually a team that I rose on a little bit after the draft. I gave him a bad draft grade, but not his own fault here. And I kind of mentioned it earlier in the pod where as a team that I kind of looked over the pitching staff one more time and I was like, yeah, actually, this pitching actually isn't as bad as I thought. So if Sandy, who looked like he wasn't really restricted, he threw, I think, 93 pitches or something like that in his first outing. If he gets a normal Sandy, then you add it to Lugo, who put up good numbers last year. Pepio, who I like a lot, who put up pretty solid numbers last year for a young pitcher. With 3.6 ERA, 1.15 WHIP, and 142 strikeouts in 130 innings. That's just kind of like Sonny Gray light, just in less innings. He has on top of that, he's got Yamamoto, so he's got upside. Upside in Yamamoto, who's got nasty stuff. Alcantara, who's got nasty stuff. Lugo and Pepio, who are like really good floor plays, just like solid players. But then you take the two closers he has here, and Hader and Helsley, the best 1-2 punch, maybe two of the top 3 or 4 closers in the league, and you're like, okay, that's got strikeouts, it's got ERA, that's got whip, that's got everything. And then he's got Bowden Francis, who like could be good if he pitches the way he pitched last year. And then Giolito on the bench, Lodolo on the bench. Like this has some components of being a top rotation. The lineup leaves a lot to be desired, but at least I can like see like this pitching staff has potential to be tops.
No, I agree. I mean, I like the pitching staff a lot. I mean, again, I think Yamamoto had 90 innings last year, but in his 90 innings, he was great. Sandy's coming back. Lugo was phenomenal. I don't think we're going to get the Lugo from last year. That might have been a little bit of an anomaly, but even if he can give you 80% of that, 85% of that, I mean that's pretty damn good numbers for the 35-year-old pitcher there. And I don't know if it's much. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if there's a better closer combo in the league
Oh
with
no.
Hader and Presley.
Hell no. Not even
Um,
close.
and again, Hader's one of those guys that even as a closer, he can have a 3.4, 3.5 ERA, but he's going to get you almost 100 plus strikeouts too. So the fact that Dexter has quite a few strikeout guys, Yamamoto's a strikeout guy, Pepio more than one an inning, Lugo still had 180 last year. Francis was close to one an inning, and we know Alcantara in the past has hit
Mhm.
200 Ks multiple times. So I like the pitching a lot. I think it's going to do pretty well. Again, there's still some shakiness there. Like I mentioned with Justin's team, there is a little injury concern or Yamamoto on a 6-man rotation, maybe a
Mhm.
seven later in the year if Kershaw
You
and
you got to
Otani
worry
start.
about volume a little bit because
Yeah,
Pepio's his career high is 130 innings. Yamamoto's on a in a 6 man, and Sandy Alcantara. We don't actually know exactly what that's going to look like for him this year. A
sure.
lot of questions about it.
And for all we know, like we mentioned, I mean, Sandy's clearly a trade chip. Who knows if it's
Hmm.
July 1st and the Marlins largely shut him down in July because they can't risk him, doing anything until they make a trade. You
Yeah.
just don't want that to happen. But honestly, the offense, I kind of disagree a little bit with you. I think this offense actually does have a decent amount of potential here. I don't think it's definitely one of the better ones. But overall, I actually had him ranked point wise quite a bit higher than a lot of teams. He actually is in that tier right
Hmm.
below some of the better teams in the league
Hmm.
in terms of how many points he has. In fact, weirdly or not, in his plus category points, he actually rated out a point higher than you.
Oh,
That doesn't mean I
interesting.
like his offense better. It just means like in terms of plus categories, he did have a little bit more. Um, I think it's very
Granted,
low,
I took
however.
a goose egg for Acuna in that category.
And that's exactly it. Not only that, but again, same thing with like an Otani. He didn't just hit 25; he hit 50. So it's almost.
Hmm.
But I didn't want to quite. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to
Yeah.
count them twice. So
Yeah.
but it's one of those things too where I like the offense. I actually don't see like a super duper weak spot there outside of maybe second base and Norby, who again is a 24-year-old top prospect who could come in and make some distance there. I don't really see like a super awful weak spot anywhere. I think they're all really solid major leaguers that are going to contribute in the lineup. I think Bo Bichette has a bounce back year, in my opinion. He was awful last
I do
year,
like
but
Boba.
what's that?
I do like Bo Bichette. I'm with you
Yeah,
there.
I think he bounces back. Riley Green, I think, takes another step. Jason Dominguez, I like a lot. I think he's going to do pretty well. So I don't really think there's a weak spot. I think it still is missing a little bit of that star power, but with Santander and Freeman, it should play with that rotation. This is not going to be an easy team to play week in and week out. I mean, we forget to mention probably the best hitting catcher in the league in William Contreras.
That helps.
So um, I don't know, dude. I think this is a pretty damn balanced team between the lineup and the solid pitching. There's even part of me that might like trust the lineup more than I even trust the pitching. And I like the pitching a lot. So Dexter's team, this is when it really starts getting tight between all those kind of fringe playoff teams here.
Yeah, so I'm with you on some of those things, and which is why I moved it up. But I think there's one thing you're also missing here, which is I think that you cannot give Peter as much of a hard time as you give Peter, and me as well, without talking about the fantasy negligence that's happening here. If Connor Norby got placed on the injured list on Thursday, and he just left him in his lineup there. He's still in his lineup. He has an open IR spot that he could have moved him down there. He could have moved Giancarlo Stanton already down into his IR spot to try and add some players. So this is an owner who hasn't even logged into his team in a couple days, it appears here, because Giolito, Stanton, and Norby should all be in IR spots, and there should be other guys picked up. So, and Dex isn't a guy that makes a lot of trades. But a lot of guys were hitting him up about Sandy Alcantara before the draft, and he shut them all down. He didn't want to hear any offers for him. So he's a guy that does tend to be a little bit more stagnant. So I'm not sure if we're gonna give Peter a hard time about it. We got to give Dex a hard time about it too. That I'm not super confident that he'll make the moves necessary to become relevant, I guess, in the league for the first time. He's got a weakness. I don't love Norby. And then Willie Castro is okay for a second baseman and runs, but again, not a guy you love having in your lineup just because I'm not sure he plays every day, but also just not really the runs is the only category he's really plus in. I guess 331 on base percentage is helpful, but oh, did Mookie just go? Yeah, oh yeah, Mookie 3-run walk off.
Oh,
Hell
bang.
yeah. Michael Bush, also a guy who's probably not going to play every day with the Cubs, and a guy who just doesn't put up a lot of counting stats either, based on what he did last year. So I think there is some holes, but I think that when you have the best hitting catcher in the league, you have Freddie Freeman and some of the Blue Jays that you have here that provide a little bit of everything. I think there's some potential here, but I don't see the high upside because I guess if Riley Green and Dominguez break out in a huge way, you can see it, but I don't really see the upside here. A lot of these guys you kind of have at peak value. Like we kind of know what Contreras is, we know what Freeman is, we know what Bichette can be, we know what Springer is at this point, we know what Santander is, and he kind of bought all those guys at peak value. It's hard to imagine another notch that this team can kind of turn it up to.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that overall there's a path. Like I said, we've used that word. I think there's more of a path than some, for sure. But we'll see. And just so we know, because I had to go back and check because I was curious. He made about 9 trades last year, so I don't. I think
Okay.
Dexter makes trades. It's just a matter of
Okay.
if they're the right ones.
Okay.
I
All
had to
right.
double check that because when
I
he
take
said
it
he was
back.
stagnant, I'm like, I think he actually was up there as making the most amount of trades last year. I don't
Interesting. Okay.
know.
So maybe he's more active in the trades. I know he shuts the Carbonis down. He does not like dealing
He
with the
does.
Carbonis.
He does sometimes, yeah.
He doesn't
But he
have the
made
pay.
nine trades is a lot,
It
dude.
it takes a lot of patience to trade with the Carboni. So,
Yeah,
it's not for everyone. And yeah, I gotta
it's
own
not
that.
for
I
everyone.
own that. I gotta wear that. It's okay. It is what it is. All right. So then we have our next team, which is Tyler's team. Now we've kind of just got done talking about some teams that have some upside, and now we're gonna kind of get into like the mid-tier teams that like it kind of becomes a little bit of a jumbled mess. So why don't you go ahead and tell me what you're kind of seeing in Tyler's team? Because this is a team where, let's see, I had him lower than you did. I
Oof.
had Dex higher than this team. I had Justin higher than this team, but you have him all the way up at 7 ahead of some of these other teams. So tell me what you like.
It's tough. The more and more I talked about Dexter's team, the more I did like it. But here's the thing I'll say about Tyler's team. In terms of my point system, he actually is tied for third worst in terms of that plus point categories. So maybe I am rating his team a little higher than I'd like. But I do think there is some things, to really like and think that can push this team forward. Hold on, I lost my spot here. Over hold on one second. Where are we at? I lost all my. Hold on, Tyler's team.
Or Tyler.
It's late in the night, man. I'm I'm,
Yep.
I'm rocking here. Where is
12:05
it?
here Central Time. We don't stop
Uh,
grinding for our many adoring fans out there.
Never ever. All right, here we go. It's loading up my slow ass computer. I was running too many screens there. All right, no. Tyler's team, like I said, Matt Olson. I actually like Matt McClain a lot. And again, he's not going to be one that shows up on these points, but I think I didn't like the price keeping, but I do think Matt
Yeah.
McClain's going to do really well this year. Adamas, Tatis. I think Walker's got some potential. Um, the pitching, the Burns and Lopez is going to be one of the better one-twos. I know Lopez struggled a little bit last year. Maybe
Burns
we see
Lopez
some.
Bybee.
Yeah, yeah. exactly. Burns Lopez, I like it a lot. Eflin. I mean, this pitching I think is going to do really
Feed
well.
families.
Yeah. The saves we'll see. Bednar did well in the saves last year. We'll see if Estevez is the guy there in KC. Those are two really bad teams, so we'll see if they can stay close in games and maybe get more saves or maybe not get many at all. We'll see there. Um, this is tight again. I had these teams really close, but I like that Tyler has a little bit more proven star power in the Matt Olson, the Fernando Tatis. I'd even argue Willie Adames at this point with what he's been able to do the last few years. Matt Chapman had a kind of a really good bounce back offensive year last year, so I like Tyler's team. I think it's going to compete in the playoffs. Um, I actually think it's actually got solid depth. I know Adele and Jones haven't been there yet, but I love those as $1 flyers. Um, Kerstad as a $3 flyer as one of the top prospects. I know he's 26 now, but um, I don't hate Tyler's team. Maybe after talking Dex's team up so much, I might have scooched Dex higher than Tyler's and Tyler behind, but I think it's close.
How comfortable would you feel about Joe Adell going into his lineup?
I wouldn't say comfortable. I like him as a $1 player sitting until he proves himself.
So I look at this team and I'm like, A, the hitting doesn't have a lot of depth because at this point in the year, like I'm also kind of looking as I'm going through the team. One thing that like stands out to me with some of these teams, like, what's your weakest link looking like? And is this team that's like pretty solid top to bottom, or like kind of? And this is a team that I'm like, Ugh, Ben Rice and your utility, a Jordan Walker who hasn't proved anything, who was brutal last year, and your outfield, Pico Armstrong who as we talked about, is going to steal bases, but I don't know how fantasy relevant he's going to be. Christopher Morel, again, another guy very low on base percentage. Not sure what he's going to provide. You know, he's going to maybe do a little bit of everything, but maybe not do anything well. Certainly not OBP. And Matt McClain hasn't proved anything either. So like that's like five or six guys there that I'm like, I don't really feel good about this being my starting blank. I don't feel great about Matt McClain being my starting second baseman, having proven nothing. I don't feel great about Morel, PCA, Walker being in my starting outfield, or Ben Rice being my starting utility. And then, like, as we look to the bench, Joe Adell, Nolan Jones, Kerstad, and Stowers, I don't want any of those guys in my lineup. I don't wouldn't trust any of them. So, like, it's a team that doesn't really have hardly any depth. The pitching is top heavy and it has some depth, but it also doesn't have a closer. So, I mean, Estevez maybe, but I guess Bednar is the closer, but he can't close games if you just keep coughing up runs left and right. And I don't know how long his leash is going to be because of how bad he was last year. It's going to be an ERA liability. I don't know between Estevez and Urseg what's going to kind of happen there. So it's a team that has holes and doesn't really have a lot of serviceable depth to kind of fill those holes. So I don't really know what's going to happen here. So there is some pieces there of what a successful team would have, but I just think that there's some flaws here. So yeah, looking back on it, I did have Dex's team higher than Tyler's, and I would keep Dex's team higher than Tyler's, despite kind of what I said about Dex's team. I see a clearer path for Justin's team to be better. I have Justin higher in my power rankings than Tyler's team, just because I just feel like Justin's team has a clearer path, has more upside with his pitching, because I think the pitching, if they go inning for inning, I think that Justin's pitching will be just as good as this. We just don't have the injury concerns for Tyler's rotation that we have for Justin's rotation. But like, I don't, who's to say who's going to get hurt and who's not going to get hurt? So that's kind of like inning for inning. I think I like Justin's better than Tyler's. But Tyler, I guess, has a much clearer, better offense. So maybe after talking that out, maybe I would still have to put Tyler ahead of Justin and slide Justin down. But it didn't affect our consensus because
Yeah,
you're a
I got to
little
make
more
some
on point
moves,
with
man. I know we've done it before, but
Justin.
like I said, I threw mine together on some points, kind of what. And Tyler, like I said, is technically in the point scale the third worst team, but I thought I liked it on paper a little bit more. It's tough because the more I looked at Dexter's team and talked about it, the more I liked it myself. So,
Yeah.
I'm gonna move Tyler to 10 and Dexter to 8 on mine.
Okay. Okay. So we'll look at this here. See, because then I would also flip. I would flip Justin and Tyler. Right now I have Justin at 9, Tyler at 11. I would flip those two.
Yeah.
Uh, input. I think because I think that the pitching is pretty negligible. Justin only has the one closer. Uh, Tyler has like three quarters of a closer, and in Bednar, and then Tyler's offense very clearly better than Justin's as it
Yeah, I
currently
was gonna say
stands.
Tyler's offense. I
So
mean, again, who knows what Trout, but Torkelson's off to an okay start. Azuna, Rodriguez, Reynolds, Cruz, Machado, Alonso. I mean, there's
wait,
some
who are you
definitely.
looking at?
Oh, sorry, wrong team.
Yeah,
That's
you're looking
that.
at the wrong
We're not
team.
on that one yet. Yeah, wait till we get to that one. That one's yeah, we'll get
Yeah.
there. But no,
So
I'm gonna swap. I'm gonna go Tyler at 10, Dexter. Dexter, I'm gonna move
okay.
up to
I
8.
don't
So
know how
I'll fix that.
that'll yeah, well then we'll have to readjust the consensus as we're kind of talking it out. All
Yeah.
right. So any last words on Tyler's team here? Because it's hard to imagine what moves need to be made. I was, thinking maybe just a small move here and there, but I don't know. It seems like a team that's incomplete. It needs a little bit of work. It has some components, but I'm not really sure what the path is, what the actual upside is when it comes to a
Like I
championship
said, I like
caliber.
the pitching. Like I said, I do like the pitching, and you do have a couple boppers that might be able to carry you in Olson, and Tatis. I mean, Olson
Hmm.
and Tatis are superstars, and you do have Burns and Lopez, and like you said, BB Eflin has been very, very good in his career. So overall, I'll say the pitching could be a top 4 or 5 rotation because I definitely think it could. And the hitting, you could get carried by those super, and that's why I do have him. I don't think he can't make the playoffs. Like I said, I do think that
Hmm.
6 through 11, 6 through 12 range is close, but I had to knock him down a little bit.
Hmm. All right. So our next team is going to be a team that is a little bit of a just a blah team. This is a team that I was pretty low on it. I didn't really see a path for. But the more I kind of look at it, a team that I thought that like the draft kind of snuck up on him, and I really wasn't a fan of how the draft went for him. It was just like I kind of looked, I was like, he didn't really get much of what he I feel like he needed. But as I kind of look at his team across the board, I'm like, this team actually has some decent balance. I mean, it it came into the draft at a better spot than I think I gave it credit for, especially from a pitching standpoint. Um, with his current pitching staff, I mean, this is a team that came into the draft with a crap ton of strikeouts. So when you're starting your team with Dylan Cease, Garrett Crochet, and Freddie Peralta, I mean, for Christ's sake, that is 630 strikeouts between
Yeah.
three players. And then you add Duran and Munoz, who are maybe not in the top tier of closers, but I'd say top 10 closers in that range. You have some upside in Rocker and Flexen. I don't really love the Flexen call there. Kind of needs a fourth or a fifth starter there, but he had Luis Heel, and unfortunately the injury happened there. So he was expecting Heel to be his fourth, and maybe Rocker or Flexen to be his fifth, and then that's wait, why is Flexen in his rotation? Flexen is not even like, is he with the Cubs right now? That doesn't even make any sense. I don't really know what's going on there. That's a little bit of a ding there. But then the offense here. I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. It has pieces here of guys that could be pretty solid. It has some speed with Witt and Mullins and Simeon, maybe a little bit, turn back puck, Yelich a little bit. Could be a little bit better, but not awful. He's got some guys with some upside in Ramos and Yelich, like I said, and Vientos and Simeon and Hoskins. So he like has a little bit of pop, has a little bit of speed. And the weak links in the lineup, I would say, would be Tommy Edman, who didn't really do a whole lot from a fantasy standpoint, but he was hurt a good chunk of last year. So even if he goes back to like being a 13-27 guy like he was the year before or last, that could be pretty helpful. Josh Bell, who 19 homers last year, not a great fantasy guy anymore. Yandy Diaz, he's always had a man crush on Yandy Diaz last couple of years. I don't really love that. So some holes, but I think overall as a whole, it's not bad.
Yeah, Chris's team, it's pretty balanced. Like I said, I think if your offense is led by Bobby Witt, Christian Yelich, Marcus Simeon, um, we'll see if Reese Hoskins can kind of do. Even Cedric Mullins, he's obviously off to a good start here in this early part of the season. I think Helio Ramos takes another. So I do think the offense is solid. I think it's going to do all right. Um, the pitching. I mean, if Cease and Crochet are going to be Cease and Crochet, and if Peralta, gets to form that, it's going to be a pretty solid rotation. Duran and Munoz obviously out there, getting the saves there. Kumar Rocker is a top prospect, so I definitely think it's got potential. Charlie Morton on the bench. Louis Gill injury hurt because I think if you throw
Yeah.
Louis Gill into this rotation, I think I'm not saying he's a superstar, but I think if you could pair Luis Gill and say you have Cease and Crochet and Peralta ahead of them, I really do think we could be looking at one of the better rotations in the league for sure. And then obviously you still have some of that star power on offense. So again, Chris's team was again one of those right in the middle that was really kind of tough for me to gauge. He was right around other teams in points, very close to those other teams. Um, but I just think he's lacking a lot of that kind of star power up front. And that's where I think he's going to kind of struggle there. I think he's got a lot of just depth guys. Obviously, the one, two, $3 to $5 players, he's got a ton of. But he might be just missing a few more of those kind of middle, just rounded out lineup and rotation guys that are going to make his team great. So he's going to compete, but something's got to go right, like we've said before.
Eric, the more I
Yeah,
look at it, the more I don't like it. I think the thing that draws me to this team is like I think this team is good in places like when you have your two closers locked in that you said it, forget it. This team will very likely lead the league in strikeouts, kind of in a way that Chad did a year or two ago. That was just kind of far and away the top strikeout team. So like, I mean, unless he keeps flexing in his lineup, I guess, because that's going to be a zero for you. So it's I guess hard to maintain that. But I'm sure I'll find a way around that. But like I think that's why like when I look at this, I'm like, oh, like this is one of our top rotations. Like I like this rotation better than Tyler. But the more I kind of look at it, I'm like, do I like this rotation better than Tyler? I think maybe the big tiebreaker is the two closers because, Ty or Chris's 1, 2, 3 are right there with Tyler, comparing Cease, Crochet, and Peralta, comparing that to was it Burns,
Lopez
Lopez
and BB.
and Bibby. So I think that's kind of like toe for toe. Like that's pretty close. But then if you have those two closers in here, it kind of gives you the edge. So I guess there's a small edge there, but I mean Tyler's offense is a lot better than this offense. And so I think that's kind of a big tiebreaker there. So I actually just went back in. I switched those two. I keep moving Tyler up. I kind of moved Dex up a spot and I moved Chris back down because I do think that having the 4 and 5 as rocker and Flexen is painful. That's the worst 4 or 5 in the league, and there's nobody on his bench that I would trust to take that spot. And then having Yandy Diaz, Josh Bell, and Tommy Edman in your lineup as guys that aren't really producing a lot from a fantasy standpoint. Edman, I would assume if he's playing every day, is going to get you your steals, and maybe some OBP. Oh no, not OBP. He's not a good OBP guy. But I guess in a decent Dodgers lineup, you maybe hope for the best. But yeah, I just think that there is some holes here, and it's not a team that has, even if you're going to have Bell and Diaz and Edmund in your lineup, like you need some superstars to kind of lift those guys up, and there's not those superstars here outside Bobby Witt. So there's just not enough here for me to really take this team too seriously. And I don't really know what the move is either because it's another team that really doesn't have a lot of depth here. And I look at the bench and don't see a lot of moves that can be made for favorable pieces. So unless he's thinking like a 2 for 1 somewhere, which it's hard to imagine doing a 2 for 1 and having making this team better if he sends out one, getting two back. It's hard to imagine improvement, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Like I said, I'm gonna update my rankings soon. I didn't change them too much, but I got Chris at 9. Like I said, I think he's gonna be able to compete a little bit here. Like I said, if Lopez and Burns are or not. Sorry, I keep switching back and forth teams now. We keep talking about Tyler and all this stuff. But if his pitching staff is gonna keep competing with
It's the
Cease and
last midnight
Crochet,
pod we do.
I know, right? And Peralta and all this stuff, he's gonna do well. And who knows? Like I said, Yelich is gonna be 33. Simeon's gonna be 34. Those are a couple guys you're really counting on. So I think things can fall off very fast for this team. But in terms of what's on paper, as long as they do what they're supposed to do, I do think this team will compete. But injuries or anything of that sort, which obviously can happen in baseball, I do think this team would be in deep trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean anything to wit, and this team is sunk. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you just gotta hope that Wit can carry you so far. All right, so that was Chris coming in at number 8. So now we're going to get into the top half because that was 8 through 14. So now we're in the top half, the top 50th percentile. And here's a team that we're going to disagree on a little bit here because you had this team lower. I had this team higher. I wanted to be really bold with this team, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. It's a team that we probably expected to hear from by now. You're probably a lot of I'm sure Chris and Justin and Tyler are thinking like, how has this team not been mentioned yet? Just a blah team. Return to the blah. I'm loving the team name here. You get style points with the team name. This is a team that has a pretty solid offense. It's from top to bottom. I don't really see a hole in this offense. Sal Frelick isn't great. Luis Arias, I'm not a huge fan of, but provides a little bit of OBP, a little bit of few categories. But I don't love those players, but I mean, I don't know if we have an offense that's like really flawless. Bryce's is pretty solid. But then like the pitching staff he has a weak pitching staff, but once again, I kind of see the path. Like I see the idea here. Like I can see the picture he's painting here where he has veterans who are like Cy Young level veterans in Max Scherzer. And then he has guys with a ton of upside in Hunter Green, and he has grizzled veterans that you kind of know what you're getting, and Aaron Nola, who does never gets enough respect every year. You've been well documented on your Aaron Nola love as a guy that doesn't get enough respect. He's got Mitch Keller, who's just kind of a lunch pail kind of guy, who if he can get back to kind of what he was in the last 2 years ago, not gonna like the 4.2 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, but if he could somehow manage to be the guy he was when he was, well, I guess he did strike out 210 that year. But if you can kind of get a little bit more out of Mitch Keller, and Sean Burke, who really turned heads in his opener, Severino, who really pitched well in his opener. I mean, there is some pieces here. So Calvin Fauché, he might be the closer for Miami. I think that's really to be determined. Even if he is, having the Miami closer as your only closer is a problem. I believe in Porter Hodge. I just don't think it's going to happen right away. I think it's still a month or two from Porter Hodge getting the job because they're going to give every opportunity to Presley. I just don't think Presley's good enough to keep it. I do like Hodge. I like that pickup, but it's going to be a stash for a while. Yates, I think, is going to be a zero. I don't know Halverson, what's going on here, but yeah, I mean, I feel like there's components here of like, oh, like these are guys that if everything goes right, like this is actually a solid pitching style. Like if Scherzer refines it, if Nola just maintains, if Mitch Keller just strikes out 200, even with a 4 ERA, if Hunter Green does what he did last year, if Sean Burke has a breakout rookie season, like that's a pretty solid 1 through 5 from a team where I like thought that had no pitching. And then the lineup has a lot of upside as well, a lot of star power, a lot of homers, and overall, pretty solid offense. So I actually had Dave really high. I had Dave as my number 6 team. And I wanted to even go higher. I just wasn't sure if I could trust it. I wasn't sure if I could get all the way there.
Yeah, I got him as my 7 team. I think he's going to be right there in the playoff picture. I do. Here's what I'll say: him
I have
making
you
the
written
hundred
down as
green.
8. Did you? Oh, you
I got
said
him.
you switched it?
I didn't switch it on the uh file yet. I just got him on the
On
phone.
the doc, you have David 8.
Oh, do I? Huh, that's weird. I got him at no. Oh, maybe when I moved Dexter on this one. Yeah, so I got David's. I'll have when I fix it. I'll have David 7, but obviously with the consensus and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But um,
This team is
here's the
better than
thing.
Dexter's team.
I like it. I do like it more than Dexter's team a little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna have Dex 8 and Dave 7. I think that making that Hunter Green move made all the difference in the world because I would be very skeptical of this pitching without that.
Move that made sense for him.
He had Altuve in this lineup, which would have made this lineup, I think, one of the top 2, 3 lineups in the league. But I also think the move was needed to kind of filter out the pitching depth there because I still can't say I trust the pitching. Mitch Keller was last year. Aaron Nola is only getting older. I do like Aaron Nola, but you got to hope he does that, if not better. You can't really hope for any regression from
I
Nola
think
based
teams
on
like
that.
Tyler and teams like Justin have a better pitching staff right now, but I can see the stars aligning. Like I see the vision here with this team is kind of the way I
Maybe.
can put it.
I've always been a Severino fan, and he was great last year.
Yeah.
Or he finally came. I shouldn't say great. He came back to startable last year, but it still wasn't amazing. Max Scherzer hasn't been anywhere near Cy Young form since what 2022. I think he was solid in 2023. So I don't know.
He had a
I don't love the
.95 whip
rotation.
in 2023. Even
What's
last
that?
year, I say that he had a .95 whip in 2023, but he hasn't been healthy in a while.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Um, I think he had a the total whip was a 1.12 if you look at his total.
Oh, they're looking at. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, you're right.
So I mean he's been solid, but again, he's 40. Like what can we expect out of him? So I don't like the pitching very much. Maybe Sean Burke turns into like a rookie of the year kind of candidate. Okay, cool. Then the pitching looks a lot better. Those are the things I'm just not gonna be willing to predict right now. But the pitching I'm a little skeptical on. You're right. The names are there. It might if Green and Nola are they got to be great because I'm a little worried what's after that. But in terms of the hitting, I think you nailed it on the head. I think this is one of the better offenses. I think it's probably top four, top five in the league for sure. And
This
that's
offense
just even thinking,
could very well lead the league in home runs.
yeah, for sure. And that's even with just thinking Trout just played. I mean, if Trout can get close to 140, 150 games, which is obviously a big if, we're talking Trout, Rodriguez, Reynolds, O'Neill Cruz, Manny Machado, Pete Alonso. And again, I know Pete Alonso's
And
been aggressive,
Ozuna,
but yeah, Zuna, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a
39
really, really
homers last year.
solid lineup that's going to bop pretty good. And even a guy like Sal Frelick, I know we haven't really talked about him yet, but he's a guy that's going to just steal 20 bags. He's going to maybe score 70 plus
It's gonna
runs.
need him.
So I just don't think there's really a weak spot on this lineup, which is good. You might have to watch out having Frelick and Luis Reyes in the lineup, but he also bounces it out with a bunch of boppers. So
Hmm.
I think Dave's team's solid. I think it's going to compete for a playoff spot.
Mm. This is a team that could really use a guy like Jonathan India to steal some bases for him and score runs because he's got boppers. He's got the pop. He doesn't have a lot of run scorers here.
Yeah.
Julio will. O'Neill Cruz maybe a little bit. Machado a little bit, not a bunch. But this is a team that might have to hit up Dave something about that. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, I just I see the path with this team more than I see the path for a lot of other teams. So that's why I'm a fan of it. I have him at number 6 in my power rankings. Unfortunately, that only brings him to number 7 in our consensus. So still in the top half. Good job, Dave. I
Yeah.
mean, for Dave to take from the scrap heap to nothingness to be where he is. I mean, that's a pretty good achievement so far. Hopefully, he can kind of build on this and
Yeah.
work his way up to the top.
And in terms of balance, he actually has, in terms of top 100 guys, he had 10 or sorry, 9, which was the most in the league.
Did you
Now
give point
obviously
system and rankings for the last couple teams?
I can't remember, but I could always go down. But Dave's at 34 points, which again is right around Chris at 32. Right around even Krim, like I said, has got 35. So it's not a perfect science, but like I said, mix that with the ADP. Where in ADP wise, like I said, 1 through 100, he's got the most players. It's very balanced overall through. So I don't
Hmm.
I here. I think some teams, if something goes wrong, they're in bad shape. I think Dave's in a decent spot where, like, if he lost a hitter, his lineup is still good. It's
Hmm.
not maybe if he for some reason
If
lost
you
to
had to put
Machado and
Mountcastle in,
Russell,
that's just fine.
yeah,
But he doesn't have any depth after that.
exactly. Yep.
So yeah, I like it. I like what Dave's doing here. And if the pitching, I mean, the lot needs to go right. I'm not saying that Dave's pitching is one of the best. It's just like I can see it. And I don't really have
Right.
another way to say that other than that. Next, our next team coming in at my number 7, your number 6 is going to be our number 6 in our consensus power rankings, which is Phil's team. Special K. Here we have a team that has some players who kind of filled in some gaps, got a little bit of everything in the draft, kind of dipped his toes in a few different waters here. Kind of comes together as he has like a kind of top heavy pitching staff. He's got the 2 closers. He's got some decent offensive pieces. What do you like? What do you not like about Phil's team here?
I thought Phil did a pretty good job, especially after the post draft. I thought he was one of the better teams in the post draft. He's got eight players in the top 100, and he's got another 15 players in terms of even just 100 to, I know a big gap to 300, but 12 from 150 to 300. So he's got some depth too. Like he's got some star
Mhm.
power up front. He's got some depth. Christian Walker's going to bop. Max Muncy, Dansby Swanson, Randy Ray. I mean, some of these guys might be a little past their prime, but we're talking guys that are just going to go out there and play pretty much every day and do their thing. I mean, Jazz Chisholm, I think, is an upgrade in New York. Dylan Cruz, I like a lot. I'm a big prospect guy. I
Yeah.
think him getting, 145, 150 games. Salvador Perez, I know you probably are shrieking at seeing a catcher in the utility, but
Oh yeah.
if he hits 30 home runs, he's Alec Baum had 90. I literally do not, I don't think I see the superstar. Oh my God, this is great. I don't think it's a top 4 or 5 offense, but I think it's going to play every week because I don't see a
Well-rounded.
glaring weak spot in it. I just
It's
don't.
very, very high in steals. The top steals team and still has a little bit of pop.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. I just don't think that there's no one that I'm like you need to bench him. You need to get him out. Like everyone's solid. Everyone's in there and that's pretty good. The
Mhm.
rotation, like I said, there's going to be a lot of hit or miss here. Zach Wheeler's one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in baseball. Freed in New York. We'll see if those numbers go up or not. But I like Brown. I think
Yeah.
Arrighetti's solid. Eovaldi's the last couple of years just been a very solid. You can kind of throw him in there, your rotation pitcher, and then having Clase and Scott. I think overall this is just one of the more well balanced all around top to bottom teams. I There's not really again there's nothing in the rotation I can say needs to go. There's nothing in the lineup that I say needs to go. And even the bench players, Garcia, Peterson's going to hit 20 plus bombs. Caballero might steal some bases. So I don't hate this team. I think it's pretty solid. I don't think it's got the star power of some of the top teams, but it's going to be pretty well rounded.
So with this team, I think the biggest X factor is who I've clicked on right here, Spencer Arrighetti, because Spencer Arrighetti in August last year, 1.95 ERA, 0.89 whip last year in August. He had 47 strikeouts in the 32 innings. Did he have a no-hitter last year? Was he one of the Astros
Mm,
or
I
maybe
can't remember.
close to a no-hitter or something like that, maybe in that stretch. Um, or maybe he just had like a really good like high strikeout game. And then in September, 20 innings, 20 strikeouts, a 3.92 ERA, higher whip, 1.59 whip. So kind of ran out of gas late
Hey,
in
hey Kyle, that's
September.
a great snapshot. If you look April, shit, May, shit, June, shit, July, shit. Oh, August, good. September, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's look at the 1 month. It's a
So
6 month
yeah,
season.
well, that's what I'm going to say because his overall line is not great. 4.5 ERA, a 1.40 whip. So, but a good strikeout rate, 171 strikeouts at
Yeah,
145 innings. The reason why I think that he's an X factor is like if he can whatever he did in August, if he can kind of figure that out and be like the SP3. I mean, he spent $10 on him, so I mean, he believes in him. So it
sure.
seems like some other guys, whoever bid nine, I don't know who it was, seemed to also believe in Spencer Arrighetti to kind of be something. If Arrighetti can be the three for him. And then he goes Wheeler, solid one, good as it gets. Freed at the two. Freed, solid year last year. I really like Max Freed this year. Then he goes Arrighetti at the three, Brown at the four, also really good in the second half last year. Eovaldi at the five, who I like, especially it's just like as a four or fifth pitcher, you kind of know what you're getting. And the two closers in Tanner Scott and Class A, who are also pretty solid. Scott's not going to get every saves, but the Dodgers have won all four of their games so far by a margin of 1 to 3 runs. So they've had save opportunities. They're going to continue to have save opportunities. So even if he doesn't get every save, it's still going to be useful. And then Class A, best in the business there. So like Max Meyer also has some upside as well. So like I see the upside in the pitching here. Maybe not to be the best, but like the components are kind of there of kind of what you
Yeah.
need. And then the offense, kind of the same thing. It's really high in steals. It has some promise, not the best, not the worst. Has some decent depth pieces. Yeah, there's nobody in this lineup that you gotta like, no liabilities here. One guy that people sleep on that I don't really I everybody seems to be sleeping on Max Muncy this year, and I'm not really sure why. If you look at these numbers, like 36 homers, 21 homers, 36 homers, and then 12 homers in the shortened season, and then 35 homers the previous years. RBI totals, great. 100, 105, 94, 98. Run score total, 95, 95, 110, 75. Like, and then OBP, 358 OBP last year. He doesn't steal big, but like that's a massive four category producer, basically year after year after year. And I don't know why people aren't higher on him. Like I've been in leagues this year where Max Muncy went undrafted. I'm like, maybe it's because it's batting average leagues. He's that much of a liability. But I just don't really get the Max Muncy hate. I have an offer in my inbox for Max Muncy, and I'm very tempted to take it. That would kind of change both of our rosters quite a bit. But this is a team that he's going to make moves. He's going to be on the waiver wire. We trust him to always be relevant. He's not really like a seller. He's more of usually a buyer as long as he can.
I mean, Hunter
Um,
Brown was really good last year too. I mean,
yeah,
like I said, I think Hunter Brown.
second
We
half,
talked about
yeah,
Arrighetti. I think Hunter Brown is the three. I think
maybe.
Wheeler Freed Hunter Brown is very solid. You know.
Yeah, I think it could be. So, like I see the components here. Like it's kind of just one of those mid teams. But it's from a manager that we trust a little bit more than others to kind of be on the waiver wire, make trades, make moves to improve his team and get it to a place where it needs to be. And as it currently stands right now, I don't see a weakness in this team, which
No.
you gotta like.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. I think
Even
he's
if
going to
it's
be right
not the
there in the
top rotate,
playoffs.
it's not the top rotation, it's not the top lineup. It might not be top five in either, but it might just be maybe in the 5 to 7 range of both, which is not the worst place to be at this time of year until you can kind of make your moves, take advantage of your other opportunities.
Yep, agreed.
Next, this is going to be a weird next 10 minutes here because we have 4 and 5 in our power rankings is a tie. So for a fourth and fifth spot, and it just so happens that it is both you and I.
Hey, hey.
So it is a tie for fourth and fifth. I don't really know where to start. This is where everybody tunes out or fast forward, so they don't get to
Right,
hear
yeah,
us jerk each other off and have
right.
have a cock fest here. But yeah. So let's start with your team.
Sure.
Your team is a team that has a lot of upside. We know what the upside is with the offense. The pitching staff has a little bit of upside as well. You have some guys who were Cy Young finalists. You have some guys that are drafted very high in Logan Gilbert and Justin Steele. You have a little bit of depth here. I don't love the way it looks right now from a rotational standpoint. I feel like you went and drafted your closers. You went and spent the money how you needed to in the auction. I like when you do that. There seems to be some holes in this roster that I can't really get over right now as it currently stands. I see a Jung Ho Lee at outfield who I like. I'm just not really sure what we're getting out of him. Brandon Marsh from a fantasy standpoint, 16 homers, 19 steals. Maybe it's because there's only 400 at bats last year. So if you bump that up to like a 20 homer, 25 steal, that's something you like a little bit more if you're getting that out of Brandon Marsh. Luis Garcia is not a full-time player. He's a platoon guy there. And then Gleyber Torres,
His 500 at bats last year, disagree.
Garcia.
Yeah.
That's not full-time. It's,
Dude, he played
that's most of the
140
time. That's
games.
that's
Are you calling
strong. It's
140
strong
games
side
of
platoon.
Are you calling 140 games a platoon?
Yes, he's strong side platoon,
So
and that's
what's
what he
the other
is.
guy play? 20 games?
Yes, but it's
That's not a
also.
platoon, dude.
But they also have. They added. Was it Edmundo Sosa? Is that who he's sharing with?
And who the fuck is that?
That guy who's the guy that hits lefties. That's
Oh,
his
so
job.
the 15 games they'll play. Okay, the 15 games. Sorry, my
It,
bad.
it might
I
be
just
more
didn't
than
know 100.
15 games.
I didn't know 140 games was
Well, he didn't have the platoon mate as much last year. Now he
Oh,
has the platoon mate a little bit
I guess I
more.
got to look up Sosa's numbers.
And then he wasn't with the team last year. He was with the Phillies, I think, last year. And then Gleyber Torres, another guy who, from a fantasy standpoint, 15 homers, 4 steals last year in a full season. Not a guy that really was contributing from a fantasy standpoint. So I think that even though you have your studs and your Ellie De La Cruzes and your J
Hmm.
Rams and your Vlads and all that and Suarez, who's a big power contributor, and your Schwarber, to see some of the gaps in the lineup I didn't love and to see Jake Irvin and Justin Steele get lit up and Michael Waka in the rotation, uh, and Kevin Gausman, who's a high whip guy and a low strikeout, not getting any better. I just think that there's some chinks in the armor here. This is not a team that looks invincible. This is the team that I had you as my number one team most of the year last year.
Yeah,
As like this is my most complete team. It scares me the most. And I look at this year, I'm just like, there's too many chinks in the armor right now for me to really like this team.
I think you're just pulling some stuff out right now. I got to defend my Gosman's not a strikeout guy.
He had 20 less strikeouts than innings pitched last year.
I know, but we're talking 3 out of the last 4 years. He's probably top 3 in the league,
Yeah, but he's also 35 years old this year.
and so is your Mr. Degrom, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we also forgot I got Senga and Blanco on my bench just because they weren't starting this week, right? So that's the
that's
only
kind of
reason.
the biggest thing there is. Oh, I guess Blanco. I guess Senga and Olson. I think I like Olson too. And Blanco,
Right.
I guess you
And the
could
only
like
reason
Blanco.
Olson wasn't in their rotation was because they didn't show him as a probable starter. So that's the only reason I did. So I mean, I had Blanco, Olson, and Sanger going to be in my rotation almost
So I
every
guess that
round.
that improves a little bit because I was assuming that you were going to put Olson and probably Senga in there. I wasn't sure about
Yeah.
Blanco. But yeah, I just I don't
Hey,
know.
no, I feel it. Like
I
I
don't
said,
I
you
don't
said
trust a lot of these guys. I don't trust Irvin.
like
I,
and offensively, like I said, offensively, I didn't need to go into the draft and really get anything. I mean, I have 4 offensive guys that are in the top, I think, 12 players. Um, Vlad, Jose, Ellie, and Schwarber. Suarez is gonna. I know he's not one of those guys, but just between Schwarber, Ellie, Jose Ramirez, and Vlad, that should really carry me. That's gonna carry me each and every week. The rest of the guys can just put up average numbers, and I'll be fine there. I mean, obviously, if injuries happen, that'll suck. Hopefully, I got the depth there. But no, I like my team a lot. I got myself. I think at what was I 3? I think I got myself at. So
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna be up there.
you have yourself at 3. I have you at 4. So
Okay.
it just so happens that just the way it worked, it was just kind
Right.
of we were kind of jumbled up here, and it just so happened that
Oh,
even
sure.
though with 3 and 4 still averaged out to be the fifth best team,
Right.
tied with me also at 5, 4 and 5 is me. So if we want to compare and contrast our two teams here and continue to just suck each other off here, we will slide over to my team here, and with my team,
Oh,
it's
and
another
real quick,
team.
by the way, points wise, I know it's my system, so you're probably not going to be shocked at this at all.
Yeah.
But the team that had the most, plus categories, points was E-Rock's Dynasty squad,
Oh, of course, of course. It's so
right?
so
My
wild that
system, I
that
made it.
it's so
Makes
weird
sense.
that Eric's system really highlighted his team better than anybody. It's kind of
Uh-huh.
a crazy
I
concept
was
there.
technically there was only two teams that had 20 points in both offense and pitching, and
Hmm.
it was me and Chad. Dana was super close,
Well, yeah, no shit, because you look at some of these guys and that didn't pitch last year. In some of these teams. So yeah, and so if we compare and contrast that to my team, like I had me actually lower than your team. I had you 4 and I had myself 5, but
hmm
you're a little bit higher on my team, which is going to be weird to talk about here. I look at my lineup as it's currently constructed, and obviously there's holes here that I don't love. I don't love having guys like Cam Smith unproven in the lineup. Jeremy Pena is probably more of like the first guy off the bench, the guy you want currently in your lineup. And Tommy Pham, obviously saving my season with his 2 steals so far, but obviously not a guy that I plan on having in my lineup unless he just keeps stealing one steal per game. The star power with Mookie is really my only real stud currently in my lineup. So he's not really the kind of guy to carry an offense the way like a Bobby Witt or an Aaron Judge can for a week. Granted, he just hit 2 home runs tonight, so hard to say that. So as it currently stands, the lineup leaves a little bit to be desired. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, these guys are Lars Nootbaar is great, this and that. Like he is what he is. The pitching staff is, I feel like, the savior here because I do still feel very strongly as my pitching staff is
hmm
currently constructed that this is probably the best pitching staff in the league, and I'm happy with as long as DeGrom is on the mound, as long as Chris Sale's on the mound, that these guys are going to mow guys down and be okay. So I feel like the offense is. I don't feel like it's got like massive holes, but it leaves a little bit to be desired until I can get Acuna and Gunner back in there, which kind of changes things.
Yeah, no, your team's really, really balanced. You got 9 top 100 guys, and in terms of, like I said, point wise, you're right on the nail with the fact that you got the most pitching points for sure. I mean, this
Mhm.
pitching staff's good. It's one of those where you can't say this about
And
many
that
teams.
that includes not having any DeGrom stats last year or
Yes.
not having
Yep.
any Clay Holmes starting pitcher stats.
Yep. That
Interesting.
includes that. Yep. You still had the most points even without counting that, and
Wow.
that's literally what my point was. I was
And
literally
no
going to say
Woodruff.
you can't say this about many teams, but you could lose DeGrom and feel fine. You can almost look at him as like that added bonus. A lot of these teams I've been talking, like Justin's team, his whole pitchers were injury histories, right?
Mhm.
We could have said this. We said this about your team last year when it was DeGrom and Sale and some of these where I was like, dude, it might not. We'll see. But Sale ended up winning Cy Young.
Mhm.
It worked out. It played out. So your team is pitching. Not only do you have it, you also have the depth. I feel like behind it a little bit too. Leiter, Boz, even a guy like Holmes, I like in the back end
Woodruff
of
in a
that.
couple weeks.
Yeah, Braves rotation. So honestly, you got a wealth of pitching, and I think it's one of those things where you should win on an average head-to-head week out of 5 categories. You can't always guarantee 4. You can't always
Mhm.
do it, but I think in general you should win 4 pitching categories week in and week out, which means hitting wise, you only got to really win 2, 3. Sometimes your hitting's going to pit. I think your hitting again based on my numbers, it came out as a very average lineup, probably about
Mhm.
seventh, eighth in the league,
Yeah,
sixth, seventh, eighth in the
it
league.
is. And I've always felt that way.
Yeah, and I think that's about where it's at. But again, I don't see any glaring holes. Pena, Cam Smith, super unproven, 50 games in the minors. We'll see. But it's got a little bit of star power there that you can count on in Mookie Betts. Brandon Nimmo, I like. Josh Naylor's a bopper. I do worry if there's injuries, though. but
Oh
you
yeah,
have the wealth of pitching.
it's
And
already
again,
happening.
we talked in earlier about knowing the owners. And I know that you're going to make trades when you need to make trades. And I think that factors in. Do I think you're maybe on paper the fourth or fifth best team? Probably. But that pitching made you rise up, and the fact that I think you're gonna make trades is gonna keep you up there.
Yeah, just gonna try and weather the storm. I mean, I'm not gonna. Hopefully, I can peak in about a month, and hopefully, it's not too soon. But if Acuna's back in a month, and then Gunner's back in a month, and then that's when Woodruff kind of starts to come back, and kind of go
Oh
from
yeah,
there and see.
Once
Yeah,
Gunner and Acuna come back, that average offense jumps probably to 3 or 4. I would
yeah,
say, right?
hmm
I mean, if you're leading it with Acuna, Henderson, and Mookie Betts, that's tough to go against.
yeah. Um. All right, so I think that's enough covering our own teams because who cares? All right, so we're gonna go to
The least watched part, right?
another tie that we have, which is a tie for second place between our second and third power rank team. So Eric and I were 4 and 5 tied. Next, tied at number two is two teams that I'm going to talk about this team first. This is the team that I am a little bit higher on because this is actually my number two team, your number four team, and it is Dana's crew here. Now, maybe my ranking is a little bit high based on some of the logic that I used on some previous teams, but here's what I see in Dana's team here. I see an offense that is petrifying. When you go top to bottom, you got Austin Wells, Paredes, Jimenez, Devers, Xavier Edwards, Bellinger, Corbin Carroll, Teoscar Hernandez, Brent Rooker, Lawrence Butler, Jackson Merrill. And you're like, okay, you're going through it and you're like, okay, this is pretty solid, pretty solid, pretty solid. And then you get to like the bottom, and you're like, Brent Rooker, Lawrence Butler is his utility, and Jackson Merrill is his other utility. And then you go to the bench, and he's got Soderstrom on the bench, Shanuel on the bench, and Carlos Correa on the bench. Even Jake McCarthy might be a starter for some teams out here with 25 steals, a 349 on base percentage, and 8 home runs last year. So, like, I look at this offense, I'm like, wow, that is probably our best offense in the league. And having the depth to make moves in a league that, like, me, I'm really struggling right now because like I have pitching, but nobody really needs or wants pitching. Because everybody just kind of wants to see what they have right now. Everybody wants to add offense. He has offense. And then you go to the pitching staff, and yeah, pitching staff is not great. It's actually a pretty bad pitching staff right now. I actually think that Finnegan is not really great. Finnegan last year, yeah, he had 38 saves, but he also did that with a 1.33 whip, 3.68 ERA. So like I don't think that Washington's going to have like a super long leash with him if they can find somebody that's going to perform a little bit better in those save situations. Justin Martinez is not the full-time closer. I think they're still going to make him earn that. I think him and Puck are kind of splitting time. And like I said, I think it's going to be ambiguous for a while on who's going to be the closer. And when you have that 50-50 split, it's hard to keep that guy in your lineup because he might pitch 2 innings a week and maybe he gets a save, maybe he doesn't. And so if you have a closer in your lineup, he doesn't even get a save for the week, that kills you. You got Tyone who got lit up. You got AJ Smith-Shawver, who knows what you're going to get. Yeah, Chris Bassett, who's had a really up and down career last year, coming off a 1.46 whip and a 4.16 ERA. And then I like Bryce Miller. I like Framber Valdez as some floor plays, but where's the ceiling? Where's the ceiling in this pitching staff? I don't see it. Losing Kirby sucks. So, the reason why I have him so high is because I feel like the moves are there to be made. Um, but it's a petrifying team, but it's very incomplete. So maybe I should have probably slid him further down in the power rankings further than I did for what he currently is. But it's a scary team.
Yeah, in terms of points, it's tied for second most. Obviously, I had the most I mentioned, and then Dana's tied for second most points. I mean, he's got a pretty loaded team. A lot of that is that offense. I mean, like you said, there is not really a weak spot at all in the offense. In fact, I do think I have more superstars, right? Vlad, Ellie, Jose Ramirez, Schwarber, stuff like that. But you mentioned I have a Martian there, this and that in there. Hung Ho Lee. I don't see a single guy in Dane's lineup that you could even argue that you could
No,
even take a whiff of that is benchable. I mean, they're all
no,
pretty
no.
damn solid.
To
And,
have
and not only that,
Correa on the bench, who had a really solid year last year.
yeah. Yeah. And even a guy like Nolan Schnall, that's a guy that probably, again, not great numbers. 60 runs, 15. That's Wilbur Abreu numbers from last year. I know that
Mhm.
name's been mentioned a lot, but that's literally the same line Wilbur Abreu pretty much put up. So
Yeah.
the fact that he's got Correa, Jake McCarthy, who stole what was he? I know, again, not a home run guy, but he had 60 runs, 25 steals last year,
Hmm.
a 350 OBP.
Yeah.
These guys are on his bench. I think Dane's got some of the best depth, without a doubt, in the league. Now the pitching obviously doesn't have any bench spots there, but the the hitting is going to, again, kind of what I mentioned with your team and the pitching. His hitting should win him. It's a really bad week if he doesn't at least win three or four categories. I
Yeah.
mean, every single week, at least in a head-to-head perspective. The pitching, we'll see. Like you said, losing Kirby's big. That makes a huge difference in this rotation because I think if you could go Kirby, Valdez, Miller, I think that's actually a solid 1, 2, 3 if you pair that with the lineup. Who knows what
Mhm.
Tyone does? Looked like shit today, but he was pretty solid last year. Like you said, don't love the closers, but if he can even get a combined 45 saves from those two, I think that's pretty solid.
But
45,
they're also
50.
gonna. This is a brutal whip team too, for the most part,
Oh
because
yeah.
Bassett is a really bad whip. Tyone not great, but Finnegan and Martinez are gonna kill the whip.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No doubt about it. But I think this is just one of those teams that's set up really well, and maybe that'll show in Roto a lot more. But in terms of head to head, I think this team is strong enough where it's going to win four categories a week heading, and it's got a couple closers, so it could win a save cat. Oh, it's got Valdez. If you can get Valdez and Miller on a couple starts a week, I think Dane's team's going to always each and every week be a tough out. So he's going to
Hmm.
be in there each and every week.
Yeah, it's gonna be frustrating when you hit like 16 home runs in a week, and then she's like, "Oh, yep, I hit 21 and beat you in all
Yeah.
five categories, actually." So,
Yep. Exactly.
then you're gonna have to win those pitching categories. And yeah, there's gonna be weeks where he might, your closers might not have save situations that week, and then he sneaks, saves from you too. So then you're like, "Oh, I lost 6-4 to Dane." Yeah, that
Yeah.
that thing can kind of happen. So,
I think me and him have
pieces
the
there.
two best offenses in the league. I think we do. Yeah.
So that brings us to our number two team. Also, well, two and three. So this team is tied with Dana for the second overall, which is the Beantown Boys. We disagree on the Beantown Boys in a major way. We really do. We have a disagreement here. So I am the one who loves the Beantown Boys. You are a Beantown Boy hater. I have the Beantown Boys as my number one team. You have him number five. Explain
Yeah.
yourself.
Well, I said it many times on the show. I think 1 through 5 is super close. I do. I don't think I'm hating on his team. I think it's really, really good. I worry. Like I said, I think it's extremely solid. But hitting wise, I see Juan Soto. And then what? I mean, it's solid stuff. Will Smith, solid. Casas, solid. Bogarts,
Judging
who
by your
knows now?
metrics, though, this is the team that we said had like no players outside the top like 150, though, right? So yeah,
He
it's not
had
star driven, but it's also like really
he had 12 in the
solid,
top
well
150.
rounded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he had 12 in the top 150. Great depth. I mean, looking at the lineup, this is not me talking trash about it. This is better than a lot of lineups in this league,
For what
right?
it's worth, he has 12 in the top 150. There are only 11 starting offensive players.
Right. Well, I don't know if they're all in the offense. I
Oh,
didn't.
okay, okay.
Yeah. But in terms of just lineup, I don't think there's necessarily like a bad spot in this lineup. I just think it's a lot of Juan. And again, you can get carried by Juan Soto, but I think it's a lot of Juan Soto and then what? I think Jaron Duran's solid. We'll see if Doyle can do 20-30 again. We'll see if Abrams can, maybe Caminero. There's a lot of guys that just need to take, I think, another step because in terms of actual points, the points I've been mentioning all year, he's more so in the middle of the league in offense in terms of what that's provided. And most of these guys played last year. So it's not like I'm missing a whole lot. Caminero numbers, maybe, right? These
Mhm.
guys played last year, and his offense still ranked about half average in the league. So I think it's missing just one more big superstar bat. And then the pitching, okay, I like Scooble. Didn't last, I know before you turned my mind, right? Blake Snell, okay, 6-man rotation, but you know me and I know you know him about Blake Snell. Blake Snell has had very decent, okay seasons in the majors, and he's had those couple Cy Young years, the shortened season than last year. Other than that, his wins quality starts literally can be a category killer. I mean, literally a category killer. His whip is always extremely high for them outside of his Cy Young seasons. Blake Snell's whip is always high. He doesn't get quality starts. His whip is high. He's going to get you strikeouts. So if you're not getting Cy Young Blake Snell, you're getting average Blake Snell, which means you have Pivetta. I like Ober, but I'm still iffy on Lopez. I got to see it again. I got
So
to see it again.
his whip
So
isn't ace levels, 1.18 2 years ago, but last year was 1.04.
okay,
So, I
yeah,
mean, that's
in 100
solid.
innings, yeah, I mean that's very solid. But that's the lowest of his career in 100
Yeah.
innings, right?
Yeah.
Outside of the 2018 years. So
From
his
a guy that
whips,
has two Cy Youngs.
well, it one's 2020,
Yeah.
right? Or no? Oh
Uh,
no, I think it was 2018. 2018, he
yeah.
probably won it, right?
2018.
Yeah. But really, again, outside of the Cy Young seasons, Kyle, it's the whip's almost 1.2, if not 1.3.
Hmm.
So the quality starts, you're not getting more than 5 innings out of Snell. We literally saw a season where he had over 120 innings, 7 quality starts, 120 innings, 11 quality starts. Last year, 10 qual. So I don't know. He doesn't go deep in ball games. Again, that's not me
I
hating on him.
think he is like never pitched past the sixth.
Yeah, there
If
was a
I'm
crazy
remembering
stat like that. I
correctly.
remember that was one of them during the Cy Young season where they were kind of talking about that. Yeah,
Oh
for
no,
sure.
last year he
Now,
did a bunch actually.
yeah, I like
Seven
Gore.
innings, 6.197.
Yeah, I've always been a Gore fan. I like Gore a lot. I think he's got some depth. Obviously, Luzardo. So again, I like Bryce's team a lot. I think it's one of the best teams. It could end up being one. It could end up being 4 or 5. It's definitely gonna make the playoffs. But I almost feel like it's just lacking one more surefire superstar to pair with Soto. And I don't think it's there. I mean,
Well,
obviously Soto's
Jaron
school.
Duran is a second round pick.
Yeah, I mean he's very solid.
So Jaron Duran's a really solid player. I mean, 21 homers, 34 RBIs, and a ton of runs, or 34 steals, and a ton of runs scored. 111 last year. Solid in all five categories. You have so you have Juan Soto, you have Jaron Duran, and then Junior Caminero could take a leap as being a guy that just lit up rookie ball or
RBIs though. RBIs are killing him.
the overall his team.
I think so. I mean, if you look at the 2024 numbers,
Yeah, potentially.
yeah, I mean, does he have
Tristan
his what?
Casas, though, I mean, some of these guys, like as you mentioned, like you had him, but yeah, like Caminero was hurt last year. So was Tristan Casas. Tristan Casas was hurt last year. So like their stats aren't really popping up in the way that you would expect some of the other ones. Same with Tyler O'Neill, but Tyler O'Neill's hurt every year. He only had
But you got a lot of
411 at
guys at the
bats.
top. I mean, that's true. But
Westburg.
Doyle, Duran, all those guys are going to be 1 or 2 hitters in the order.
Hmm.
I mean, they played 500, 600 at bats last year,
Yep.
and I don't know. We'll see.
But he also,
Like I
if you
said,
turn to the
it's still I think it's
bench,
a top 6-ish lineup, but I don't think it's
this is a
top
better
3 or 4.
bench than Dana's. So we talk about weak links with Dana. This could be like it is just like Dana has no weak links in the lineup. There's nobody here that should be on his bench in his lineup. But this bench is even better than Dana's. Joey Ortiz is a starting shortstop for the Milwaukee Brewers. I think he's going to steal 30 bags this year. Joey Ortiz is. I think Toglia, a lot of people are asking about Toglia. A lot of people want Michael Toglia. And then Kyle Manzardo already off to a blistering start to the year. Was a single shy of the cycle yesterday. So three guys who would be contributors on any other team. I would put all three of these guys in a lot of other teams' lineups. So bench is solid. I think there's some trade that needs to be made here. The pitching staff has potential. I don't love it. But I mean, I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge some of the things that we've seen from some of these pitchers. You have Skubal, Cy Young, Snell, Cy Young, borderline Cy Young player last year. And down the stretch last year, incredible. Mackenzie Gore, who was the best pitcher from the first day last year. Reynaldo Lopez, who had incredible numbers last year, 1.99 ERA, 1.1 WHIP. Tanner Houck, who was pretty solid last year, low
Mhm.
strikeout total. Bailey Ober, a lot of smart people in the industry are really loving Bailey Ober this year. I think he gives up too many home runs. But you mentioned not having whip with Blake Snell. Well, he does have whip with Bailey Ober. Um, and I do like Jesus Luzardo now with Philly as well. So like there's a lot of good names here. I think he needs another closer because he only has the one closer, Edwin Diaz, who also has looked pretty shaky in spring. His velocity's down. And so we've kind of been in talks about a second closer, but haven't been able to get to the finish line there. But I feel like I mean, if I could get one of these offensive players for one of my closers, I feel like it makes both of our teams quite a bit better. Just haven't found the right deal that makes sense quite yet. He's happy with where he's at, is what he says. So he doesn't really want to make any trades right now. He wants to see how it pans out, and that's what a lot of teams, all time teams are getting a little gun shy right now.
No.
So yeah, I mean,
And
I like where his team is right now, but it's not perfect, and I hope that
no.
he makes the moves when it's appropriate to make the team better.
And I think another one that's tough is I mean, Soto and Duran need to provide the runs because again, I know we mentioned the injuries, which can change things here and there. With I mean, Caminero didn't get called up till later in the year. Casas was hurt and stuff like that. But he also only has Duran and Soto as the guys that had what over 80 runs last year. Doyle had 82, so Abrams was right at 79. So we'll see if
But
that
I
holds
think
up.
these guys will. I think a lot of these guys will score a lot more runs. I think Westberg will score a lot of runs. I think O'Neill will score several runs. I think Abrams will score a lot of runs. Bogarts will. I think he'll be fine in that
Yeah.
category. All right, which brings us to our number one team, the Wasted Potential, the podcast sponsor, not the podcast sponsor. Tyler's the podcast sponsor, the league sponsor himself. Chad is going to get the number one team nod here. Came into the draft as the number one team. It just all he had to do was not fuck it up, and I guess he didn't fuck it up. So, lineup top to bottom has the star power. It's a very complete lineup. Pitching staff, it's a complete pitching staff, although it's not perfect. Um, I don't think we don't really have a team that's looking flawless right now. We can kind of point to different things, different teams, which is as it kind of should be. But there's a lot to like about this team. Has a bunch of offensive upside, has some pitching upside. Is there like a weakness that you see here with Chad's team?
Man, this is interesting because again, he's got the second most points in
You
terms of my
had Chad as
system.
your number one. I had Chad as number three.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, like I said, he's got the second most points in my system, but the pitching staff does worry me a little bit, especially with some of these guys out. Grace Rodriguez obviously went down, stuff like that. So the pitching staff does worry me somewhat,
It
especially when you
worries
look
me
at
a
some of these
lot.
guys like Gavin Williams. Jeffrey Springs hasn't pitched in a bit, but Christopher Sanchez was decent last year. Joe Ryan, Zach Gallen. I don't know, man. Look at his pitching staff. I'm kind of nervous.
Look at the whips. Gavin Williams,
Yeah,
1.36 whip last year. Jeffrey Springs, 1.36 whip last year. Zach Gallen, 1.26 whip last year. Christopher Sanchez, 1.24 whip last year. And even Devin Williams now pitching in New York with the short porches out there. Not
yeah.
great. And he's got Ryan Presley as a second closer, who I already said I don't like, who's already getting lit up early this year. Jose Soriano, 1.2 whip. Casey Mize, 1.4 whip. There's a lot I don't like here.
Yeah, no, it definitely switches it up a little bit. I don't know, because here's the thing: I do like the offense, but I also said I liked mine and Dane offenses. I think mine and Dane offenses are the best, but this is right. I do think this offense is right there. I mean, Otani, Kyle Tucker, Ian Happ, Ketel Marte. Um, that's going to carry, but kind of similar to mine, very star heavy with Otani and Tucker and Marte. There are a couple spots where, like, okay. In terms of like the Jorge Soler, that's going to be fine. Luis Rengifo, it's going to be fine with the steals. So I don't see any huge gaps. We'll see what Strand can do over a full season. I don't think there's really any gaps in this lineup. I do think this is probably right behind me and Dana's in terms of lineup, and that's what my points show as well. Dave also, I think right there. I think those are the top four lineups, but the pitching staff does kind of got me a little nervous now looking
Mhm.
at it. But it's this is still a playoff team. I mean, no doubt about it. This is going to be a playoff team. It's going to compete with the offense he has. He'll trade. Mike, he's got to find the right one, but he'll trade if we need to. And I do like Jeffrey Springs a lot. I think he for the Athletics could be a big bounce back kind of guy. I know I'm big on injuries and stuff like that, but when he did pitch a couple years ago, he was amazing. So he's going to need that because, yeah, dude, the pitching staff's got me a little nervous looking at it. Joe Ryan's great. Zach Gallen has regressed a little bit. Do we need Zach Gallen to be great to feel good about this pitching
But
staff?
Ryan Salaby's not an ace,
Right.
and neither is Zach Gallen.
Yeah. I mean, not off last year's numbers, right? The
Yeah,
2 years prior, yeah. But
he never was. I'll die on that hill.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, dude, a 2.54 ERA with a point .9 WHIP and is not an ace. I feel you.
nope, nope. So yeah, I mean, there we talk about we've for a lot of teams we've talked about what could go right. Man, look at this team and what could go wrong. This team could like fall really far behind in whip. I mentioned that. This team could fall really behind in strikeouts because look at all these guys that strike out like not a really great rate. I mean, Christopher Sanchez is not a strikeout guy. Spring's an okay strikeout guy. Joe Ryan an okay decent strikeout guy. Gallen a decent strikeout guy. These guys who could have high whips, high ERAs, they give up a lot of homers. Some of these guys tend to be a little bit wild. And then from an offensive standpoint, like what if James Wood just doesn't break out? What if he's just kind of very blah? What if he just doesn't take the lead? What if he gets sophomore slumps? What if Otani stops stealing bases? What if Soler
Right.
just doesn't really have anything left with the Angels? And what if Volpe doesn't break out? What if Renjifo doesn't provide any power? If he's more of like a 5 home run, 25 steal guy? What if Christian Encarnacion Strand doesn't break out? Like this is a team that like came into the draft not he just had to not fuck it up. Like this is the team that should have all the veterans on it. Like this is the team that like Krim when like Krim's team how he has like the Goldschmidts and the Arenados and kind of some of those guys where it's just like draft your kind of veterans here. Like this team kind of needs the breakouts from a lot of players. And he kind of bought a lot of guys at their peak value and James Wood at $30 and Profar at $6. I see a path for this going horribly wrong for Chad actually. So I did like the way the draft went for him and what the kind of values he got. It was frustrating because I can see the upside here of Soler and Profar, and I was frustrated with some of the guys that he got. But I actually see a way that a lot of this could go wrong for Chad this year in a way that I could see Chad like falling out of the top three in Roto.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. Like I said, I do think this is 100% a playoff team. I mean, like I said, even if the pitching does struggle, I mean, this team's going to hit. I mean, this team's going to. I do think the top three-ish offenses, top four-ish offenses are a pretty league ahead of some other ones. But I mean, if James Wood becomes, I mean, this we're looking at Profar, Tucker, Wood, Otani. I mean, this team's going to do really well in terms of those categories. But I don't know how long Javier is out for. I don't know how long Grace Rodriguez is out for. It looks like it's going to be a little bit at least. So,
Yeah.
um, this might be one of those where Chad might need to make a trade a little earlier than later to make sure it kind of balances out before it gets off the tracks. But yeah, when we break down our final run it back here at the end of the show here, I
Hmm.
think I had to make a couple changes.
All right. So that finishes our power rankings. We didn't really talk any of the trades, so we got to go back to circle some of the trades and see kind of what's happening here. So, I'm gonna go edit my power rankings. Why don't you go ahead and let's change this to all teams. Why don't you talk about some of the trades we haven't gotten to, if there were any we haven't gotten to?
I'm trying to think. I know we talked about the BB Pasquanito one. Volpe, Sanchez there, Gray, win. Uh, I don't know. I think we talked about most. I think the Jock Peterson or Rodriguez one was kind of a straight up one for one there. I like that from Phil's angle of just kind of having that bench bat. We'll see what Rodriguez can do in his first year. Yeah, a lot of these are kind of just small one for ones, but I was pretty happy with the fact that we did have as many trades as we did have post draft. I think it was kind of interesting to see that kind of come out and play. I think we counted up. I can't remember what it was before, 7 or 8 trades. So not any huge blockbuster ones. And that's the thing with Chad's team too is we both didn't love the trade with Krim, and we both love Chad's offense. But I do think it would look even better with Lindor, and that's the tough
Mhm.
thing. I like Hap. I don't like Mason Wynn and Ryan Presley too much. So if you're telling me this team would have also had Lindor in the lineup already, it might have been the best or second best lineup right there, along with Minor Danes. I still think it is there, but Lindor I think takes that to another level. So a
Mhm.
little worried about the pitching, but
Yeah, I'm a little worried about the pitching as well. So I think we talked about Bybee for Pasquantino.
yeah,
How we kind of like that for both. We talked about the obviously the other trade there, the top one there. Singer for Sanchez doesn't really move the needle for me hardly at
no,
all.
that's nothing.
Yes, is Singer relevant? Is he worth starting? Then maybe it's decent. I don't think Sanchez is much of a fantasy asset here. Peterson for Eduardo Rodriguez, same thing. Like I'm not a Peterson guy just because he doesn't play every day. Could be solid, could hit 28 home runs or whatever he's going to hit this year. He had 23 home runs last year, so even 28 being generous. When he's in the lineup, he's solid, but you like have to play your matchups. You have to see how many righties they're going to face because he's not going to be in the lineup against lefties. He was not in the lineup on opening day, so that's not the kind of guy I want in my fantasy lineup. But neither is Eduardo Rodriguez, so who the hell cares?
Right.
The Altuve for green one we talked about, the Lindor one you just got done talking about, and
Yeah, I think we pretty much got through them all on the
I
show
guess
because
we
those are
didn't
now
really
getting
talk about
pre-draft.
Eovaldi and Perez for Singer and Doyle. So that one I feel like rounded out Bryce getting Doyle. We kind of like that. Singer, who he turned into Jesus Sanchez,
Yeah, I
giving up
look at that as
Salvador
very,
Perez and Eovaldi.
very comparable. Singer and Doyle, like I said, Singer had about 100 K per nine last year, a little high 3 ERA, not bad. I think Eovaldi and Singer are very close to a wash in terms of their lines. But I'll take Doyle over Perez this year. I mean, Perez is probably going to hit 30 bombs, but Doyle's a 20-30 guy. He could be the next Nolan Jones, but overall, I'd say Bryce probably honestly got the better end of that trade, but I don't think it's really all that far off.
Yeah, I like it better for Bryce getting Doyle, even if without Singer. I like getting Doyle for Eovaldi and Perez because like I like Eovaldi, but he kind of is what he is. Like you can find
Yeah.
Eovaldi's kind of on the waiver wire a little bit easier, and then Perez, my pet Perez logic is well documented.
Sorry that we had to
Um,
show the Garrett Cole trade there too, Krim. I know that's going to hurt your heart before the draft.
yeah.
Sorry, buddy.
Um, but we'll see. We'll see how Austin Riley performs there. We'll see if it actually ends up being a as bad of a thing as we thought it would. All right. So do you want to read your final edition of your power rankings? This is going to kind of change
Yes.
some things here.
Yeah, looking over it, like I said, I didn't base it solely off my points, but I did use that as kind of a gauge. I looked at, the ADP and stuff like that. Overall, my power rankings, and my top six teams will be my playoff predictions. I got Peter at 14, Jordan at 13, Justin at 12, Krim at 11, Tyler at 10, Chris at 9, Dex at 8, Dave at 7, Phil at 6, Bryce at 5. I talked myself out a little bit. I'm going to have Chad at 4. Still think he's a playoff team. Still think he's one of the better teams, but might need to make a move. I'm going to have Dana at 3. And then, man, the co-hosts. I got myself at 2 and then you at 1. Because
Oh,
again, I think
don't put that evil on me.
I did once Acuna and Gunnar Henderson come back, you're going to be right up there as one of the better offenses in the league. Pair that with the pitching staff, and you'll be just fine.
I hope, but not right now. Not right now. So it's unfair to
6 months, man.
put
6 month
me
season.
there.
You'll be all right.
Um, I'm gonna go. All right, I'll go reverse order, I guess, since you did. All right, I had Jordan 14, Peter 13, Krim 12. I moved Chris down to 11. I was higher on Chris. I moved him back down after I combed through his roster one more time and just saw too many gaps. Not enough star power in the places he needs it. Dex at 10, Justin at 9. I moved Tyler all the way up to 8. I had him low. I had to move him up to 8. Not past Phil though at 7. Phil's more well-rounded. Dana, I moved down a hair just because as her team currently stands, with not having a good closer situation, not having good starting pitching, the gap there is just a little too tough right now to overcome for what Dana is right now. But his team still scares me for what he could be. I ended up moving Dave ahead of Dana just because I think Dave's team right now is currently the offense is slightly worse than Dana, but
Mm-hmm.
his pitching is better than Dana right now. That's not too close for me. Then I have Chad just because we pointed out some flaws with Chad. So Chad at 4. I put me at 3 because I still think I have a pretty okay balanced lineup and still the top pitching with all the categories. Put you at 2 just because I moved you up 3 spots to 2 because I overlooked the depth you kind of had there sliding in some of those guys and the star power, but I still think that there's some gaps in your lineup that I would like to see improved. And then I still am going to have Bryce at number 1 because I think that there's a lot of upside in the rotation, but really the lineup is just too well balanced from a lineup perspective. There's depth, there's balance. There's nobody in his lineup that should be taken out. He's got a ton
Right.
of depth. He's got more depth, hitting depth than anybody. So from that perspective, I'm still gonna have Bryce number 1.
Hey, look at that. They're officially
Um,
capped. Look at that.
we are playoff predictions. How could we forget? Let's do our final predictions. Are you staying chalk? Your top 6 are your 6 playoff teams.
Yeah, because I mean, it takes two. I mean, you only need one from each division, which counts for that. So I'm gonna go with that as my top 6 teams, since it's not like it's 3-3. That would obviously change it up quite a bit if we ever did that. So I think if I'll break it down like this, I think Kyle, you or myself, I'll even say Bryce, even though I got him a little lower than Dana and Chad, I
He's
think
on
his
the top
team's
6.
safer. I think
Yeah.
Kyle, Eric, and Bryce are definitely for sure's. I think Dana's got a little bit more higher ceiling, so I think Dana gets in, Shad, and I'll say Phil. But again, I really think like right around Phil, Dave, Dex, maybe even throw Chris in there. We'll see if Tyler. Again, we talked all about it, right? I think 6 through 10 is going to be a battle, but I think 1 through 4 ish is going to very much set themselves apart.
So, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, my playoff predictions are exactly what they were last year. It's the same 6 teams I selected last year. Not all these teams made it to the finish line, but my playoff teams are going to be Eric, Chad, myself, Dana, Bryce. But however, number 6 is not top 6 in my rankings. I'm going to bump Dave. I'm going to bump Dave and I'm going to put Phil in instead, just because I think that Phil has a better track record of being able to get the job done, get into the playoffs better than Dave's record is of that. So I'm going to give a little bit of managerial nod there to Phil and
There we
bump
go. Look at that.
Phil up from the 7 spot, bumping
I
Dave
like it.
out because I just trust Phil to be more active on the waiver wire, make the adjustments, make the trades to make his team better. My champion prediction, so my head-to-head champion predictor is Dana because I don't want it to happen. It's been a tame rival. The rivalry between me and Dan has been pretty tame lately.
There you go.
Nothing, outside of a few jabs, LeBron jabs here and there. It's
All it
been
took was
relatively
Rogers
tame.
getting off the team. Who would have believed?
Yeah. It's been a lot better, but like I said, his team, like just the components of his team just scare me more than even the likes of like Chad. Uh, yeah, I think he is probably the biggest threat right now for some of the pieces that he has. So
Yeah.
I think if he pulls the right strings and keeps making some of the good trades that he's made so far, it could be a scary team. So he's going to be, and if the team gets hot, if the pitching gets hot, he's just got to figure out 5 starting pitchers by come August to really get him to the finish line. It can happen. And
No
so
doubt
he's
about it.
my champ prediction.
All right. Yeah, like I said, I'll probably go like I'll go 1-1-2. I'll say just to put the stress on you, I'll say you'll win it.
Oh God. Oh, thank you for their jinx. Appreciate that.
Track record, right?
Oh,
Just go
only
ahead and get
way,
it,
only
Kyle.
way
Get
you
it
know
done.
how.
Get it
I
done.
do have one ring. I do have one.
Yeah.
And then we have Jay has one. Did Jay have
Two.
two? Two?
Two, right?
So me
And
and
then Jordan with
Jordan
one. That's the
are the
four.
current active ring holders. Jordan and I each with one here. And then I'm gonna go my roto predictions here. I'm gonna predict Bryce is gonna win roto number one, Dana number two, and myself number three. If my guys stay healthy, I like where I'm at, but I just don't. None of my guys won't stay healthy all year. We're already battling injuries, so I just don't know if I'll be able to overcome all the injuries I'm about to face this year.
Oh yeah. Hey, it's a marathon. It's gonna be fun. I like it.
Well, what do you say? You think it's about time we log off, or do we want to talk about how we're worried about Matt Shaw for the next 13 minutes before I got to go to bed?
Hey man, he'll be all right. You got to give him some at bats. And that's like I said,
Bro
bringing it
looks
back to
lost.
fantasy for a second. Like I said, it's always fun. I always like in the league. I said this pre-show. I always love the overanalyzing the first couple weeks of the season and seeing it. We got to give some.
We
I've
don't have
always
anybody in the league that does that.
Yeah, I've always said I think even when we do have a every if we do like a pod at the end recap each month, I'll even probably still be saying that all the way at least through May is just let it ride out. There's a reason baseball's 162 games and
Yeah.
players find their strides. So we'll see what happens.
That's the beauty of baseball. And they're even talking about it on some of the broadcasts. They're like, you're not going to win every game, and then sometimes you lose one, you're supposed to win, and guess what? You play the next day. And that's
Right.
kind of like what's really awesome about baseball. And it's the only sport that does that. And sure, NBA and NHL have their back-to-backs, but it's not the same.
And that's why I feel like baseball's
They
the
load
hard.
manage and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think baseball is the hard. I know we got some betters. Baseball's the hardest sport to bet on for
Yeah,
me
I don't
because
I don't bet baseball.
yeah, you could be a good baseball team and win 90 games, and you still lost 72 times. Like I know
Yeah.
the winning percentage is still there, like I get that and all that stuff, but that's a very solid baseball team. How the fuck are you gonna sit there and bet? Oh, I think they're gonna win. This dude's gonna get a hit. Baseball is way too. I love baseball. Too hard to bet on. Can't do it.
You don't have any Cubs rants for me? No, no, nothing on Jed Hoyer. You don't want to talk about how we traded Cody Bellinger for cap space and then ended up cutting the guy Cody Poteet that we traded for and then didn't end up using any of that freed up cap space to do anything else this offseason. You don't want to talk about
Um,
that?
No, actually, honestly, in most articles I've read, most people like the Cubs off season. I think most people graded them pretty high, like B plus, A minus in the off season. They got Jed Hoyer's
Bellinger
working,
move is looking pretty indefensible.
but that had to be like that would have put him over the luxury tax. Like that would that every team
So
knew it.
what?
That's why
We're the goddamn Chicago Cubs, and
I
nobody
know, but that's
were the Yankees the only buyer?
probably. I mean, we also had to eat some of the sat. That's what I'm saying. I think it really was like I don't know if we had actually. I don't. I think we ate a little bit, but that was
We did eat
literally once
some.
we got Tucker, man. That Bellinger trade value, every team knew that he was on. He was for nothing. Yeah, at that point. I mean,
Yeah.
I personally think Bellinger is actually gonna have a pretty good year in New York,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be tough. Obviously Cam Smith being called up, gets Cubs fans a little bit nervous. Oh, 6 years of
It's
control.
wild that
Do we,
Cam Smith turns out to be more ready than Matt Shaw actually
yeah.
is.
Do we only get 1 year of Kyle? Yeah. We hope the typical Cubs things don't happen here, but they're in a winnable division. I think they've done enough. And who knows? Vlad Jr. becomes a free agent next year. You know, who else? I'm trying to think. There's some other big boppers that become free agents next year, so we'll see.
Um,
I know it's always the wait and see game. Yeah, 20. Yeah, there's some big ones available. We'll see what happens. I
Sport
also,
track.
I don't know. Like I said, as much as we talked about fantasy teams having like, there isn't anyone you'd take out of the lineup. You could, the Cubs are just one of those really weird teams where I feel like every player in their lineup is just like a very solid baseball player. And I know we got Tucker, so that's the star, but it just seems like everyone's really solid. We have the one star and no like great players. So
Yeah.
they're still like just that weird middle ground.
Infielders. Okay. All right. So we got Vlad, Bregman has an opt-out. Alonso, Tucker, Framber, Valdez, Galen, Cease, so some pitching.
Yeah, it's not bad. There's some decent pitching in there.
Um,
Some boppers.
Ozuna, but we're not going to fill up the utility. Maybe Josh Naylor at first base.
Yeah,
Michael King, mutual option.
never know.
Um,
I mean, even like a Brandon Lowe, if he could play some third, who knows what the situations. I mean, like I said, Shaw's gonna have a whole year. I'm not super duper worried about it. And if anything, maybe the Cubs really need an ace going into next year. There's some guys at the top. Is Dylan Cease gonna get 300 million? Who knows? You know,
hope not from us.
Vlad's gonna get 460, 500. So
Yeah, at least. I don't know if Vlad would play at Wrigley.
and he's one of those like I said, I would rather sign Tucker just because of the build and the body and the makeup. Vlad, you just wonder 6, 7 years from now, what does that look like?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think I just got a little bit more faith in Tucker holding value than Vlad does.
Yeah. All right. I think that just about does it. I think
All
it's
right.
time for us to cheese it out of here. Eric, thank you for joining me. Sorry I kind of dragged you along here and
Oh, you're good.
gave you around, but glad we were able to hop on and give the people what they want. That's what this is
We
all
got
about,
it
right?
done. That's what matters. We got it done. Heck yeah.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you guys stuck around for a while. Peace out.